shows you how much I write, I guess, when I'm at work. I have to do it all ahead of time.
Are you ready, Katie?
Or it's all
I'm so excited.
Hi.
I don't know.
All right. Oh, is this on? Can you hear me well? Okay.
Let's see.
All right, can I get a motion to convene into open session, please?
I move we reconvene in open session.
I'll second that.
All right, roll call vote. Peter?
Aye.
Rochelle?
Aye.
Philip?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Janice?
Aye.
Susan? Aye. Elizabeth, aye. Ayes have it. We are now in open. Welcome, everybody. The first item on our agenda today is celebration of excellence.
Yeah, so we have two of them tonight. So first I'd ask Maggie Sana to come up. She is the Director of Food Services and is going to talk about our Farm to School program.
Hi, Maggie. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. As Tanya said, I am Maggie Sana. I'm the Director of School Nutrition for Monona Grove School District. Thank you. And I am here to talk about our community dinner series. So we had our first community dinner at Cottage Grove School on Wednesday, October 16th, which fell right in the middle of National School Lunch Week and National Farm to School Month. This initiative that we took on is not an appropriate or allowable use of Fund 50. So we had to host, and we are continuing to host, fundraising efforts. So we wanted to make sure to thank the Cottage Grove Chamber of Commerce because we received a generous donation from their community outreach fund and thank them for their support. So here is the menu that we featured. Our menu featured a lot of fresh items that allowed us to use many local products. Everything that we served on the menu is either currently on the menu or has been on the menu this school year. I did bring 3 items to try tonight, which feel free. I know we can all multitask. Feel free to help yourself while we're talking. I brought our elote, taco slaw, and warm cinnamon apples, which are 3 of my favorites.
I'm going to invite you at every meeting, Maggie.
School nutrition can bribe people a little bit. So because this event was meant to highlight part of our Farm to School program, we partnered with a couple local organizations. Reap Food Group allowed us to use their Uproot food truck for serving the meal, and Allison Paff Harris, who is on the bottom right corner, helped serve from the truck. Our menu featured apples in 3 different ways. So we partnered with Cottage Grove's Door Creek Orchard to purchase the local apples, and Liz, who's part of the Griffith family ownership team, attended the dinner in her gear to help connect the community and the food. Corey Bloomer, who's on the left, is our AmeriCorps Farm to School service member, who was extremely involved with us throughout planning and implementation. I will say that I think photography suffered a little bit at the event. Here's a very unstaged picture of a tray. But we had an amazing event. Our menu allowed us to feature items from 6 different farms throughout southern-ish Wisconsin, and we sourced some of them through the Wisconsin Food Hub Cooperative. We had a great turnout for the event. I'm not sure whether it was luck or just a sign of how conscientious our community is, but we had our RSVPs come out within about 10 people of the people who actually attended the event. We served about 200 trays. As I said, we had 6 Wisconsin farmers and producers. And our community offered us an additional over $300 of optional donations. We did offer this as a free meal, but people who were willing and able to donate did show up for us as well. The Herald wrote a really lovely article about the event, and I have the link in the slideshow. It helped us get the word out about the goals of our community dinner. I wanted to start this program because I wanted families to feel connected with school meals. There's a lot of inaccurate or outdated information, and I wanted parents to kind of stop envisioning school meals that they had when they were kids. So our school meal program has undergone a lot of changes, and research has consistently shown that school meals are one of the biggest contributors to proper nutrition for our children. So our department is trying to encourage all students to participate in school meals, and these dinners are attempted to help us work towards that goal. Corey, Dana, and I met to discuss things we'd like to improve for future events, and we came up with a great list of ideas. This dinner was somewhat experimental to gauge the level of interest within the community, and we were thrilled with the turnout that we had. So we are eager to continue planning community dinners. We have had to postpone things slightly due to some shifts in staffing, but we're looking forward to picking things back up later this winter or spring. And now I would like to invite up 2 students who attended the dinner. We have Henry, who is a second grader at Cottage Grove School, and Jack, who is in kindergarten at Taylor Prairie.
Hi, Henry. Hi, Jack. You guys want to come up? Thanks for coming today.
Can you guys share what your favorite part of the community dinner was?
Seeing my friends.
Sitting by your friends. Seeing them. The chips. What did you like about the chips? Because they were crunchy or salty or blue? Because they were crunchy. You like crunchy foods?
Is there anything you'd like to see from school meals after the community dinner?
Warm cinnamon apples.
Oh.
More chips.
More chips. You hear that, Maggie? Did you take that note? More chips. Any kind of chips? What kind of chips do you like? Like the corn chips that were there, or like potato chips, or carrot chips. Some fresh potato chips, maybe.
Buffalo chips.
Buffalo chips. Yeah, buffalo chips. That is no. Don't listen to Philip about that. That's being silly.
Awesome. Anything else you guys wanted to share? Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome.
Thank you.
You're not dismissed yet, Maggie. Any questions, feedback, or comments for Maggie?
No, I want to
Yeah,
thank,
Rochelle. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, Henry and Jack.
Yeah.
Thanks, Henry and Jack, for coming and speaking in front of the board. So I really appreciate that, hearing from you.
Ah, very brave. It's a lot having us all stare at you. Yeah, Rochelle.
Do you guys remember eating that meal at school? You didn't eat, because that was served at school before, right? Did you say, or is it a little different?
All of the dishes independently are on the menu, and we combine them into this menu.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Other thoughts, questions, feedback for Maggie? Yes, Janice.
I just think this is a really cool idea to get the community to, I love your idea of like, hey, school lunch isn't what it was when you were in school. I love that. So that's fabulous.
Thank you.
Susan.
Maggie, thank you so much for coming, because as soon as I saw the picture in the front of the Herald, I'm typing right away saying, can we come next time? This sounds really cool. Just, it's a great event.
Yeah, thank you. I hope everyone can make it next time.
Well, thank you, Maggie. I say this every time you come, and I mean it sincerely. Since you came into our district, the amount of creativity that you've brought back into school meals, your passion for it. I think this connection that we're having with local farmers and local produce is excellent, not just obviously, for our local farmers, but our kids too, to really know and understand, where food comes from and, who helps grow it and those pieces. So, always and forever, thank you for everything that you do for our district, and I will release you from the seat now.
Thank you for having me.
And folks in the audience, there's food here, so please eat it because it's there and it's delicious. All right, Tanya, do we have any other celebrations today?
We do.
I thought I saw Model UN out there.
We got Model UN in the
All
house, so I'll
right.
invite them all in.
Yes.
So the Model UN group has had 2 pretty amazing events that they're going to talk about, but also, Mr. Wallace, you recently received an award, I was told. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, thank you. It was,
Share what that was.
well, first off, I want to thank them and Mr. Jefferson and Ms. Smith, the other advisor. So, it was called the Patricia Leahy Fellowship. It's given in memory of a Model UN advisor who passed away, and then the conference gives this award out. So it's to kind of empower global citizens, and so it was very cool. But again, Brian did all the work to do the nomination, and so Yeah, so it was a special moment. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll turn it over to you to
Yeah,
share.
I'm going to turn it over to Brian to start.
Yeah, so Brian Jefferson, this is my 7th year advising Model UN. Jeremy was kind enough to invite me to chaperone the trip one year, and from that moment, I've been hooked. I don't know if I've ever seen a group of students more engaged in something academic than I have with Model UN. It's been fantastic. So 7 years. In those years, we've averaged anywhere from 75 to 85 kids as a part of our club. We've had 40 to 80 kids participating, or 40 to 70 kids participating in different conferences. Just a fantastic opportunity for kids to take on leadership roles, work on skills that are really going to help them after graduation. It's amazing to work not only with Jeremy, Ms. Smith, but also with the individuals you see here, and then maybe some individuals that are watching on YouTube at home too.
We'll turn it over to our delegates here, as we like to call them, in a second. But yeah, the club is, for those that don't know, like you said, 80 to 100. It's by far the largest and most active club in the state. So we take a lot of pride in what they do. And so they'll tell you a little more about what Model UN is, if you don't know what it is, and then can answer some questions. So thank you again for having us.
Hi, I'm Trinity. I'm the president of MGMON this year. So if you're not quite sure what Model UN is, really what we do is a simulation of the United Nations. And so it's a lot like this room here. You sit in a table, you sit in rows with all kinds of other people in your committee, and you have debates. It's very procedural. There's a lot of parliamentary procedure. We do all kinds of things like that. And so you could be in a committee that's anywhere from the World Health Organization to the giant GA. You can be in like cabinets, like I was in the US cabinet for our most recent one. Sometimes there's fantasy committees. We've had Hunger Games and Romeo and Juliet and things like that. We consider it to be a great way to learn speaking skills and diplomacy and how to communicate with other people in a beneficial way, while at the same time still being able to learn and grow and learn about the world.
Yeah, so my name is Mason. I'm the vice president, Mason Cons. So here's the run through of, we usually do 4 to 5 conferences a year. This year we're doing 4. So our first conference was Best Delegate. It's virtual, log into a Zoom. It was all within MG. So that's like how we get new members to engage in the club, how we get returning members to sharpen skills. Then we went to MadMun. MadMun is the Madison area regional. It's the biggest in the state. We sent 58 delegates. We also organized it. I was lucky enough to be a part of that organizing team. And then we had 7 staff members who were chairing the committees and leading that stuff. So we had 27 award winners and 8 best delegates. That's the first place competition award. And it was a really, really successful time. Then just recently, 5th through 8th, I believe, we went to Simon. That is the Chicago International Conference. So 4 days down in a hotel, sent 47 delegates, very large delegation. I think it was the largest there. And we won 11 awards, which was a club record. And then finally, in March, we will go to Wishpun, that is hosted at UW. And that's a 2-day. Last time we went was 2022. They didn't host last year. 13 awards from 27 delegates. So very successful year this year and years past.
So, we wanted to tell you a little bit more about MadMun because this was kind of our really big, successful conference this year. So we stepped up this year. There's a system where all of the Madison area schools go around and host at different years. And unfortunately this year, due to some like advisor changeovers, the school that was going to host wasn't able to, so we stepped in. And so we hosted this year, which was actually we hosted 2 years ago, so it was a little bit of a quick turnaround, but it was definitely an amazing experience. So myself and then another member or officer of the club, Miriam, were the secretary generals, and we were super supported by Mason and Akina, who were our head of Sims. So the 4 of us put that together starting around last year, May, I would say, and then it was in November. So a good chunk of time that we spent committing and like really working towards this, and it was a wonderful experience. We had almost 500 delegates come. We had 25 schools come from around the state and 16 different committees that we prepped for, and a total, we ate around 2,000 empanadas, which is a tradition. So yeah, and that was definitely an amazing experience again, and we had a lot of fun. Trinity here chaired a committee, which was the Montagues and Capulets, so Romeo and Juliet, and we actually had our principal come and officiate a wedding. So it was very fun, and yeah, it was something that we're very, very proud of as a club.
Did he dress the part to officiate?
Sadly, he did not.
Oh, man, missed the memo there, Mitch.
Okay, and last but not least, we have the Chicago conference that, like Mason said, we just attended. We had the largest delegation at the conference. We had about 50 delegates, which is a lot of people to fit on one bus, but we made it. We won a club record of 11 awards, 12 including Mr. Wallace's award, which we are very, very proud of him for. We spent 4 days in Chicago, and while we're there, we have a special pizza place that we go to, and we rent out the whole basement, and it's a very team building, community building experience. This was a fully immersive simulation. So after the banquet on Thursday, we were fully immersed in it until Sunday during the awards ceremony. Friday night, well, I guess Saturday morning, I was up from midnight to 2, debating in committee, which I thought was really fun, but my roommates did not because they had to wake up at the same time. So we have a great time at this conference every year. In past years, we've won outstanding delegation awards, and we usually do very well at this conference, which I don't mean to brag, but it's a pretty tough conference to compete at. So.
All right, hello, my name is Akina, and now we're just open to any questions that you have about just Model UN itself or about our conferences. So, yeah.
Yeah, Susan.
In the past, I know Mr. Wallace has actually invited us to come and watch. And again, as a board of 7, and you're working on collaboration, to watch this happen with high school students, it's the most incredible lesson learning. It was an amazing experience. And one of the things we talked about way back then was keeping the board informed, so I really appreciate you're here. And 2, anytime that you're working in a way where we can come watch, it's really an incredible experience to watch you do this. These skills are amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rochelle.
I just want to say huge congratulations, and also the amount of work that you have to put in to be able to do as well as you have. I think people don't have any idea. I mean, it's just it's like a whole nother class. So bravo.
Thank you. Just like to kind of put it out there for MADMA, that one did take us since for our Secretariat's team, we had been preparing for that conference since the end of our junior year. So maybe around 8 months that it took us for that conference. So I'm very proud of all the time that all of my Secretariat's team and advisors took and sacrificed, honestly, to be able to make that conference as amazing as it was, and taking times out of our lives to create something like that.
So can you talk a little bit, and Lena, I see you, but I just want to ask a follow-up to that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, what does preparation look like? I mean, you've been preparing for a long time.
Yeah, so through the summer, how preparation would basically work was we first put out just like our simple invites on how we get staffers from all around the state as well. As much as we have our delegates, we also have people who are interested in staffing. So we teach through the summer how our chairs is what we call them, and our head of simulations, and how they want their committee to run and how it should work. So we have meetings through the summer that will prepare them for that, along with us preparing what we call our background guides, which gives all the delegates information on what they will be debating about the day of the conference, along with making sure chairs will read a thing that comes out called all our position papers. So every delegate will have a paper to write about the positions that are given depending on said committee. For example, if you were a part of NATO, you have your assigned country, and then you read the background guides and all the just back information and all that before the conference to turn in a position paper, which will then be looked at by the chairs and stuff for awards. And then we also, of course, had to make sure all of our empanadas were in place, and of course, yes. And of course, just making sure every delegate had a position and had a place to be. There was a point where we had more delegates than positions to give, so we really did have to take a lot of time to be able to expand every committee in order to allow all, like, everybody who wanted to be there to be there, because it was a lot more than we expected for us, because this year's Mad One was the biggest one yet. So we really do hope it also just does become bigger, but it was definitely a bigger preparation for a lot more than we were expecting. But it definitely turned out into just some of the best ways possible, and we were able to allow everybody to have something that was ran just really beautifully that day. But yeah.
Lena, you had your hand up.
Well, I just wanted to say, as an officer, of course, you guys do tons and tons of work, and it clearly pays off in not just coaching the members, but putting on all these amazing conferences and also doing your own competing. But I wanted to know, as an officer, what is the most rewarding part of this whole process?
I think for me, I've been an officer of Model UN for 2 years now, so this will be my second and last year. I think it's just being able to see all of our freshman delegates come in and being able to teach them the ways of Model UN, and seeing them come back after year is probably one of the most rewarding experiences, because you then realize that what you've taught them and what the fun that you actually gave them and they actually enjoyed being there was, like, it was all worth, like, the work that you put in on each person. Like, I remember when Lena really came into the club and we got to be able to tell her how to do what she does, and I think that she liked it there, so yeah.
Back.
Yeah. But yeah. But overall, the most rewarding part is just seeing members come back, wanting to come back to the same experience that they once did.
Janice, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, do you have a favorite either event or like within a conference or favorite conference? Like, is there a favorite memory that you have of your participation?
I think for me, my favorite conference that we go to definitely has to be the Chicago International, because it's definitely your 4 days in downtown Chicago. Like, it was one of my first times, like my first year going. I wasn't with like any of my parents, and of course, like our advisors have to tell us, like, it's your first. You have to be independent, you have to be like responsible, and just you're here on your own and you're competing for like your own reason. And I think that it was just like such a surreal experience for me, because it was me competing for myself and there wasn't anybody like watching me to see like how I should do better. It's me just putting my own all out there and how I want to compete and getting rewarded off of that experience. So Chicago International definitely has to be my favorite way to compete, because it's just the individuality of it. It's just like you there. But yeah.
Thank you. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just have to say I had the opportunity to attend the morning of this event that was hosted here at the high school, and just such a top-notch, like you could all be professional organizers, so smoothly run. Probably behind the scenes looks a little different, but to all the guests that you had brought in from all of the other schools and the community, it was just really well done. And kudos to all of you, not only listening to you speak and watching you engage in the activities, but just your organization and your poise. So really proud moment for the district. And you also have really soft, great T-shirts. So
They do look
always
really-
about
they do
the
look really
T-shirts. Yeah, I did
nice.
get one. So, but thank you for everything.
I just had one other question, right? So it's a competition, right? So I'm curious, like, who's our Model UN rival? Who's like the person where you're like, or school that you're like, oh, these people are there and they're going down?
Oh, who is it?
This is recorded.
I don't know if I'm gonna say it completely out loud, but definitely there's some schools within Illinois that are definitely our big competitors. There's a lot of private schools that we compete against, which definitely keep us a little on our feet and challenging. But I won't name names. So.
Good. You know, how diplomatic of you. Yes. All right. Well, on that note, thank you. Congratulations
Yes,
again
thank you.
on another successful year, and we look forward to hearing more. All right, next up is public appearances. We have one public appearance today. Jamie Jenrich is here.
Good evening. It's hard to follow the celebrations. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm Jamie Gunrick, and I have 2 kids in the MG School District in Cottage Grove. My purpose for being here tonight is to speak on the future agenda item conversation regarding Cottage Grove School configurations. And so I just wanted to give some input as you approach that conversation later tonight. So as you're thinking about the future state of schools in Cottage Grove, combined with what we all know is the fiscal state of the district overall, it's important to me that the perspectives and priorities of Cottage Grove families are adequately reflected in decisions that directly impact us. I'm not here to whine on behalf of Cottage Grove, and I'm not here to pit Monona and Cottage Grove against each other. And I want to be really clear about that. But I do think that there's value in having Cottage Grove perspective represented because quite frankly, none of you on the board have kids in Cottage Grove schools, and I do. In the past 5 to 6 years alone, which is the entirety of my kids' education in Cottage Grove and in the MG school district, there have been a multitude of short-sighted decisions that have repeatedly been made for the Cottage Grove community, and primarily so by members of this board who have no experience or no direct impact in that. So things that come to mind are the creation and building of Granite Ridge School, which is a beautiful school, but that introduced a third transition for our kids. And then a couple years later, the board is saying transitions are bad. Followed by purported research that school transitions are detrimental, reliance on old data, and then last year being told full steam ahead, we're going ahead with neighborhood schools, to now pumping the brakes on that decision. And quite frankly, it just feels like whiplash for our community about what is going on and what is continuity for our kids. I also respectfully want to address that even in previous conversations when the board was determining meeting locations for the board this year, I really appreciated, Eric, you having the idea to hold some of the meetings in Cottage Grove. I want to be clear from my personal perspective, even as a Cottage Grove resident, I support them remaining at district office. It's not important to me that they're in Cottage Grove, and I will continue to show up here wherever they are. But I appreciated your good faith effort and motion to hold some in our community, potentially making it more accessible to at least some Cottage Grove families. I acknowledge that the technology and scheduling difficulties make that less than ideal, and it may not come to fruition this year. However, at a recent board meeting, Mr. Haven, you essentially questioned the level of effort on this, citing that only 2 people came to the meeting that was held in Cottage Grove. I was there, that's wrong. There was more than 2 of us there. And typically, other than tonight with an exception, a number of speakers, our meeting turnout's pretty abysmal. I bring this up because what bothers me about that is the initial optimism and sentiment of inclusivity I felt with the idea, only to then feel like we're going to throw in the towel after giving it the old college try for one simple meeting. Again, I'll come wherever you are, you'll see me, but I just think that that kind of shows the level of interest and commitment to making sure that we have Cottage Grove presence and voice at the table. Because none of you have kids that are in Cottage Grove schools, and I do, I just need to speak to the fact that, again, over my child's education, we have had a plethora of school administration changes with our principals. There's been new schools. There's been an ever-changing model of what others think are best for our kids in our community by people who don't live in that community. And planning and reversing course that, again, just feel like we never know which way to turn. And
Jamie?
again, that's in 5 to 6 years.
That's your time, so if you want to wrap up.
Okay. I'll end by saying I know that you have tough decisions ahead. School changes and closures aren't unique to Monona Grove. And so I understand that, but I'm asking you to thoughtfully take your time, refresh your data, and proceed with caution for the long game. Thank you.
Yes.
Basically, of the speaker. See, we're allowed, once you're done, to be able to ask you a question. One thing that would be extremely helpful, just so you know, even though you don't know all the background of all of us here, but I actually have family at Taylor Prairie and 4K right now. So maybe I live here, but, you know, the only thing that happened in those 7 miles is our kids got tickets for trying to get out there faster to see their friends, you know? So, but the question I have is, if you would put together some thoughts about how we can improve community conversation and be able, you feel like how would you like us to do that so that you have an opportunity to communicate with us and you don't necessarily have to come to a board meeting and speak in 3 minutes. What are your thoughts about that?
I'd be happy to do that. I love our schools in Cottage Grove. We've had positive experiences at all 3. So it's not about what model. It's more to me about the frustration of a constant change in course that doesn't feel reliable. And so I know, again, when I was trying to close and saying that I understand that changes are inevitable, I know that Monona faced closures about 10 years ago. The difference though is that decisions were made to keep that community together. And right now it feels like decisions are made like, we don't know, we're gonna add another transition. Oh, transitions aren't good for kids. Oh, we're going to neighborhood schools. Oh, we're not. And so that's when it's so Wisconsinite.
I appreciated it though.
But it feels like I just, to the best of the board's ability, to really be looking holistically
Yeah.
and the long game and not at the short term
Right.
in that community. That's my request.
But again, sometime we can talk. Okay. I just wanted her to be aware that you
Thank you,
can ask
Susan.
us questions about the history because we have also had the transition.
Susan, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I second that.
Voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Before we move on to our next agenda item, I want to pause to recognize the fact that in our consent agenda, we had a resignation of Lisa Hype, our Director of Curriculum Instruction. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to say some words to Lisa there, and then see if anyone else had anything they wanted to share. So I'm excited for you. Congratulations on your retirement. And also, I know that it'll be a loss for the district. I really enjoyed working with you, getting to know you. I think the curriculum changes we've made, particularly at the elementary level and math and reading, are excellent. And I think that we're going to start to say, no, we're going to talk about our data later today, but I have full faith and confidence in our ability to implement those curriculums in ways that are really going to do great things for kids. I also have always really admired, Lisa, your laser focus on equity in education and making sure that we're seeing students for the whole people that they are, not just the number that they may come in with, right, or what they represent. And so I also, just on a personal note, enjoy our intense discussions. I enjoy, discussing and debating with you. You're an incredibly smart person, and I've grown a lot getting to know you. So thank you for your service, and good luck in your retirement. Yeah, Janice.
Yeah, I just like to say congratulations, Lisa, and I really appreciate your support and your help throughout my teaching career. So thank you very much.
All right. Next up is Lena with our student board report.
Up? Okay. So we're going to start with the Drama Club, who has been very hard at work on their one-act play, Beth, a parody of, I feel like this is really loud.
It's kind of echoey.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe move it a little bit this way so you're not as close to Peter's. There you
Okay,
go.
check.
Yep, much better.
Sounds good. Okay, Beth is a parody of Shakespeare's Macbeth. That's still really loud. And they competed at the state competition in Milwaukee, earning 4 awards, including the Critics' Choice Award and an award for Best Direction. And Footloose, the high school spring musical, announced its cast list last Thursday, causing much hubbub in the music departments. The show will feature 61 cast members, already more than last year's production of The Wizard of Oz, which involved 51, and that will begin rehearsals in January. Show choirs, along with 6 other groups from DeForest, Fort Atkinson, and our very own Glacial Drumlin School, put on a preview show last Saturday. And these groups have been working hard since August and were able to perform for the community for the first time before the competition season begins in January. Dance team also competed this November, placing 2nd and 4th in various styles and sending 2 trios to the podium. The high school also had 8th graders in it this Monday for Future Freshman Night, a welcome to not only the school, but the many clubs and sports that it has to offer. Students were able to speak to student representatives of various clubs and activities at the high school and get excited about these activities and ways to get involved at school. Last weekend, as you heard, was very successful for Model UN. Again, they won 11 awards, plus a special recognition for our advisor, Jeremy Wallace, at the international competition in Chicago. As they said, it's a 4-day competition entailing over 20 hours of committee, which is a lot, and all 47 Monona Grove delegates were tired but happy. Coalition is hosting Inclusion Week at the high school this week, and they're placing a focus on underrepresented groups in the school and student involvement. So we asked students the question, what does inclusion mean to you for an upcoming project? The ASL Club and the Environmental Club, they both traveled off campus last week. The ASL Club to teach elementary schoolers at Granite Ridge School some fun signs, and the Environmental Club, they traveled to Madison College for the Youth Climate Conference. This environmental club also generated over 15 boxes of clothing for the Salvation Army in their first clothing drive of the year. Also, in late November, the high school's Black Student Union was able to meet and work with other BSUs from high schools and colleges across the state in Madison College. And there were many community leaders that spoke at this conference, including the first African-American Lieutenant Governor, Mandela Barnes. And another thing for sports is the powerlifting and gymnastics team. They did extremely well at their first competitions of the season, with 3 competitors placing first for powerlifting, and both JV and varsity gymnastic teams taking 3rd place in their competition. There it is.
Thank you, Lena. Questions for Lena? All right. Thanks, Lena, for another great report. All right, next up, we will move into our discussion items. The first on the agenda is the 2023-2024 school report cards, which I believe is
a little bit of everybody.
Yeah, Lisa and friends.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to thank our leadership team that is here tonight. As the school report cards came out and we began to look at them, couldn't be more proud of the administrative team and the building principals and your instructional leaders and everybody of just really digging in and talking deeply about where are our celebrations, what are our opportunities, and what do we need to do next. And I think to your point earlier, as you thanked Lisa, of really holding true to kids are not a number. What we do isn't distilled down to a number. And the state of Wisconsin does come up with district and state report cards. They are a reality of our life, and they are some important data points that we need to take into consideration. So as DPI puts those together, they report these report cards every year, and it really falls into 4 groups of categories of things that they look at: our achievement, how our students perform on state assessments, growth, the pace in which students are achieving their academic benchmarks, target group outcomes. So every time you look at a group of kids, you know, we always have that bottom 25th percentile, no matter how high performing your district is, and how well are they growing. Because we know some of our most striving learners need to learn more than a year's worth of learning in a year to try to close those gaps. So what does that look like? And then on track for graduation, what really is looking at graduation and some other important factors that move into that. So as we have that accountability report card, we have the team here tonight. They're going to walk through it. Katie, do you want to go to the next slide? So again, as we think about what does that look like, we have some trend data here for you. From a district perspective, we achieved meets expectations. 67.8, so a nice increase there. And you can see there's some good celebrations there, and we have some opportunities for improvement. And so we're going to walk through those tonight. Just want to make a note that MG21 is going to speak to their school report cards as part of their accountability report to the board. So they're not going to report out as part of this presentation, but you'll hear it right after that from Ms. Fox-Blair. So invite Lisa and Krista up. I think they're going to walk us through the first couple slides.
Yeah, thank you. I can kick us off with the first view here, and I think you all know that anytime we look at outcomes, we look overall, of course, but the most important thing is to look at all of our groups of students, and particularly maybe our potentially most vulnerable or traditionally most marginalized groups. And so we thought it was important to bring at least a picture of some of our disaggregated data and probably some groups of students that we're paying very close attention to over time, and talk a little bit about that to kick us off. I will say, since I have the first sort of slide here with some outcomes, you'll notice like that gray divider between 22-23 and 23-24. So that's just a reminder that we've discussed it in committee in some different places, but there was a pretty major renorming of the statewide assessments for 23-24. So that just serves as a reminder that we're not talking exactly, apples and apples. It's apples to oranges when you're looking at the actual outcomes, assessment outcomes. Now, the report card did have some modification to it in terms of DPI's formula recalculating to sort of flatten the impact of that renorming. So report card scores are comparable over time when you look from one year to the next, including 23-24. But when we get down into the actual data and outcomes, we've got to just keep in mind that we're setting a new baseline with 23-24. Just a couple of things, as again, disaggregated data just really allows us to like take a more granular look and think about what we can do in a more thoughtful way around instructional strategies and implementation intervention. And I also want to just like remind us of our cell sizes too. We do have some discrepancies there with the size of the groups, and kind of just a reminder of like what is our district makeup here. So those are included here as well. It's exciting to see some growth within some of those targeted groups. That is definitely the direction we want things to be moving in. And I think as a reminder, kind of like what Dr. Frederick just said, some groups of students and some individual students have to make more growth over time in order to close that gap in performance. So we continue to closely monitor that, and specifically outcomes for our Black students. That is our group of students for whom we really need to pay close attention, and we know that our system is not currently working as effectively as we need it to be for that particular group of students. Pause there.
All right, thank you, Katie. So this next slide talks about value-added growth. And so Krista just did a nice job talking about the achievement data that comes from Forward or pre-ACT or ACT. But in addition to seeing achievement levels for all of our students, we also get some information on these report cards around value-added growth. And so what DPI does is uses a model that has a range from 0 to 6. They set 3 as the benchmark for typical growth. And then they're able to use their calculations to say sort of by grade level. And what you see in front of you here is grade level in the aggregate for the district. But we are also able to get this by school and by grade level, so even a little bit more granular, and that's pretty helpful data. But what you're able to see is where you are experiencing more than typical growth and where you might be experiencing some less than typical growth. And again, it really can direct our efforts then, either by grade level or subject area, to really say, we want to, of course, make sure that students are achieving at high levels, but we also want to make sure students are growing. So again, you can see here where we have some evidence of some significant growth above 3, around 3, and even some cases where we have less than typical growth thus far.
So, sorry, process-wise, how do you want to do questions?
We do them at the end.
Yep.
So we are going to have each building come up and talk a little bit deeper, if you want to roll to the next one. So we'll ask Angie and Reed to come up. Angie will do hers first and then Reed. So really wanted each of our building principals to come in and talk about some of the really great things they've dug into and celebrations that they're finding, and then opportunities improvement and some action steps, because we can look at data all we want, but unless we move it into action and think about what could we do now, then where do we go from there? So I'll turn it over to Angie.
Welcome, you two.
All right, welcome elementary team. All right, so I'll start with celebrations for Winnequa. I looked back at all the previous report cards, and I'm just like proud of Winnequa for continuing in that exceeds expectations level. We've been there or higher since 2011, which is a proud thing. I think our overall academic achievement in both reading and math continues to be strong. There's still some areas of growth, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But as an overall number, we're really proud of that achievement. And then our student growth in the area of ELA. So Lisa was talking about that value added. And in ELA, all of our growth numbers were above that median point. All of them were above that 3.0. And so in our English language arts, we are making really solid growth for all of our groups of students, which is something to celebrate. In terms of specific areas, ELA was really solid growth. Math was not as high. And so that's an area where we continue to want to look for growth for all of our students. So some things that we're doing in that area is really digging into our math data and specifically our iReady. That's our diagnostic that we take 3 times a year, and we can really dig into student needs and individual student needs. So looking at some of those targeted groups and really making some specific plans for them, and using our curricular resources to differentiate for those groups. As you know, we got 2 new curricular resources in math and reading, and so digging further into those and finding ways to use those curricular resources to meet the needs. And then more frequent and regular data check-ins on growth specifically. So we're doing iReady 3 times this year. iReady also has a growth component, and looking for that assessment to show what we're working on and checking in on that progress. The other goal that we're working on is outcomes for our target groups of students. Krista mentioned that's a district-wide thing as well. And you know, like I said, with math specifically, but we also did it with ELA, took some opportunity even at in-services this fall to really look at some of those targeted groups of students and specific student needs, and then made plans within our co-planning teams for those specific students and how to help them grow and be successful. So.
Thank you, Angie. Before you go, Reed, just a reminder to the board around iReady. So this will be the first year that we're doing 3 data points with iReady. Traditionally, we've done fall and winter. This year, we're adding fall, winter, and then a spring one. Just make sure everyone's level set on that. Thank you, Angie. Sorry, Reed.
No problem. Thanks, Angie.
Back to you, Reed.
Yeah. All right. So for Granite Ridge School, we were proud this year. We went into the exceeds expectations category. So we refer to that as 4 stars. The first year that we got data at our building, we were at meet expectations at 3 stars. We feel like that's a celebration for us for sure. Also, you can see some of our trends up there. We do see a significant positive trend for our students with disabilities and our economically disadvantaged students. And we're proud of that as a school building and being able to see that data represented here tonight. Also, another note is that we have seen significant positive trend for our students in math for students with disabilities. And one thing that we know about with that growth data, the targeted growth, we feel good about what we're seeing for our growth measures. We were able to get a 71 score there. It's 4 different categories that they score you. Where now we get into our improvement and areas we need to work on is the achievement's not as high as we would like to see there. And so we're working on achievement for all of our groups. Specifically, like Angie said, we're also focusing on math. And so not only do we use iReady, but we really grounded into what our formative assessments are and our unit assessments. And we're trying to do some work mid-unit now, doing some data protocols with our co-planning teams where they're looking at how students are doing, maybe say mid-unit on standards and trying to make some adjustments potentially to fill in some gaps or to make sure that our students can meet that standard by the end of the unit. So that's something that we've really dived into this year. We also have taken a different look with our leadership team and our data teams with our forward data. This year, we were provided with a heat map. It's right down to the level of the different standards that are measured, and then also all the questions within the forward exams. So that gives us another piece of data to look and see if the impact is what we want in our classroom, and then also check that with what our curriculum is. So again, there's these layers of data that were right down to the formative, to like what Angie mentioned, already, and then we are taking a deeper dive look at our forward results at Granite Ridge this year.
Right, we'll have our secondary team come on up. I think I'll just share as they're getting settled. Obviously, anytime we see a school maybe not hitting the benchmark of what we'd want everybody to meet expectations. But I just have to say, just really grateful to Chris and her team as they thought about the data at Glacial Drumlin and really digging into what they could do about it. So she'll have a little bit more to share about this slide, and then on the next slide, some of the protocols put in place and kind of a rapid response plan is what we're calling it, as we're thinking about what do we need to do right now, and then maybe structurally, or what are some things that maybe we need to do next. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I'm pretty hot. I don't know if everybody else is.
It's very warm in here.
Real warm in here. But
It is very warm in here.
in all seriousness, GDS and all of us were extremely disappointed with our report card. We've known the last couple of years that we've been very close. And so the last couple of years, we have really worked hard at our student belonging and our student voice programs and those are the areas that we do consider our strengths. Like when we started 3 years ago taking surveys on students and if they feel they belong and if they feel like they have a trusted adults, our numbers were pretty mediocre. And we are seeing growth in this area, and we do strongly believe that if students feel like they belong and they feel like they're a part of the community, we will be able to engage them better. So that's kind of our bright spot, and a couple just celebrations included with that, like where we're at with attendance this year is much better than where we were at this time last year with attendance. We're much lower in the areas of student behavior referrals, and we're much lower in the area of disproportionality, as well as in-school suspensions. So now our task with staff is to all of us work together, make sure we're doing the right hard work, and that we're using the relationships that we've built with staff to engage students in their learning. So with that, with our rapid response plan, we're really focused on 4 main areas. We broke it down into 2 lenses, like what are we gonna do right now? And please note, this started at least 2 months ago. So what are we gonna do right now, as well as what are we gonna do next year? Like what are kind of our longer term plans? So our rapid response goes around four main areas. The first one is effective use of instructional minutes, curriculum review and implementation, data and assessment literacy, and specially designed instruction for students with IEPs. I'll talk just a little bit about them. So the use of curriculum tools and literacy strategies, we're having our teachers all of our teachers received a training on literacy. So our thought around school and our talk to teachers is that it's not just up to ELA teachers to make our students literate. It's up to all of us. We are all teachers of reading, writing, and understanding what we're reading and what we're writing. So literacy across the building. We as a not just administrative team, but kind of our whole team of instructional coaches, math coaches, reading coaches, we're providing feedback to teachers. Teachers are doing reflections as they use, various depths of knowledge questions and more discussion topics. Also, as far as our curriculum tools go right now, the curriculum has really taken some positive changes over the last few years. We're in our 3rd year of using mid-school math, so it's the first year that all of our students have received the same curriculum. We're in our 1st year of Open Science, Open SciEd. Right now, we're piloting for social studies curriculum that we'll implement next year, and we're also reviewing our ELA curriculum. As far as data and assessment literacy, like I talked about, we're really challenging teachers in their C3 meetings to talk about depth of knowledge questions. So making sure we're not just asking yes/no questions or one-word answer questions, but we're asking questions that provoke more thinking and more engagement. And the goal is, with our relationships, we ask harder questions, kids become more curious, become more engaged, and the students start asking questions. So depth of knowledge questions is something that we're looking for every time we're in a room doing an observation or a walkthrough, as well as in C3 teams. And we're also trying to provide feedback on that. Also, discussion strategies, various ways to get the whole class involved in various discussions is something we've learned about and we're implementing in our classrooms. And we are also doing, checks and providing feedbacks and reflections on those that we're seeing around the building. We're doing a little bit of work on, like, I want to say kind of like boot camp for iReady and Forward. At GDS, we've struggled to get students and families to buy into the importance of test taking. We have a large opt-out number, the largest in the district. And a lot of that is focused around anxiety. You know, parents will call in and opt out their middle school students due to anxiety. And the other areas that we have that is our students with disabilities, which also oftentimes falls under anxiety. So we're really trying to share with students, so students have a better understanding of why these progress monitoring tools, as well as the state test, is important to us and them. And we're also working on stamina. I think we've really struggled since COVID to receive the stamina back, as far as like kids actually reading, knowing what they're reading, discussing what they're reading, and what they're writing. We're going to talk a little bit with students about test-taking strategies, which also falls under stamina, and understanding the why. Under the other category, the third category, specially designed instruction for students with IEPs, we are working on coming up with specifically designed instruction, especially for math and literacy. So our math coaches and our instructional coach and our associate principal, Ms. Cook, is heading up working on using the Test Trainer Pro as well as iReady Pro with students on a more regulated basis. And some of that will also come during their guided studies. We're just getting started on that now. And then in reading, our reading coaches are working with our teachers of special education on some of the strategies our reading teachers and some of the programs our reading teachers are using, so it can become more widespread and more of our staff will be trained in working with our students who need the extra help in reading. Growth in areas of I talked about that already, so the growth in area. So those are kind of what we're doing right now. And we are checking in every other week as a leadership team and as an admin team and student services team and teaching team. We're checking in even more often. And we're really looking forward to our iReady checkpoint in January to hope that we're heading in the right direction. The second long-range lens I'd like to just talk about is those are the things that we're talking about doing for next year and beyond. Right now, our students are in block classes, so they go to their core classes for 100 minutes every other day. And we are looking to go back to a pure 50-minute schedule, so they'll see all their teachers every day. With the exception of like our musics will be every other day, our world languages, but our core instruction classes will meet every day for 50 minutes, and we're really going to focus on use of instructional minutes. We are looking to change our philosophy on content and become more content specialists. And what that entails is right now because of our numbers of sections, which does switch every year by a couple, building wide, we have some teachers that come in and they may be new to teaching or they may be a first-year teacher with experience from another area, but oftentimes we're asking them to teach two different content areas, and we're looking to align that so everybody's focuses on a content area. And then the one change there would be some of our teachers, because of our section numbers, will have to teach across grade levels, but they'll still be in their content. That will help us align our vertical alignment, 6, 7, 8. And when we do introduce new curriculum, it will provide them more time during PD, C3 time, and everything like that to work on those difficult tasks. And then I think the other big thing for us is just continued use of data to make decisions and talk much more about student learning. We have a very hardworking group of individuals that works with a group of kids at a very hard age, and they go through a lot. I think everybody's always been working hard, but it's a shift. Like we've shifted. Our work is shifting. We need the shift. It's exciting, but the biggest word around GDS is it's a lot. So if you ask any teachers, how's it going? They say, it's a lot. So I'm looking forward to improve scores.
right, Mr. McGrath.
At the high school, our score was a 73.8. Historically, looking back a few years, going back to prior to COVID, if you look at our 7-year average, that score was 0.69 above our 7-year average. It was 5.9. There's a 5.9 point increase from the 22-23 school year, and that did place us in exceeds expectations. Growth scores were a real highlight for us, both in the area of ELA and math. Our growth scores were above that 3.0 benchmark for all students and all subgroups in ELA and math. So that was a point worth celebrating. Along with that, when it comes to closing gaps, we need to see growth with all students, but we also need to see faster growth with our subgroups of students. And that's exactly what we saw in both ELA and math, with subgroups and students with IEPs as well as our Black students. So those subgroups grew at a faster pace than our white students. But all students did grow. We'll continue to strive for improvement in our growth and our achievement. Those are both opportunities for us. To do that, we'll continue to focus on our core instructional model. That includes a focus on standards, learning targets, and assessment practices. This year, we started the year really revisiting our priority standards, thinking about what those priority standards look like and live like in a classroom, and what that translates to and what it means for success criteria, even projecting to the end of a semester and working back from there. So that's really where we started our year. And then a focus on making that success criteria clear for students, so that they can surface more agency in the classroom. Also continue to focus on foundational high-quality instructional resources. One example of that is in our math curriculum. This is our second year with Carnegie Learning in both algebra and geometry. It's our first year with Carnegie Learning in advanced algebra. So through our Alg Geo Advanced Alg progression, all students have that guaranteed viable curriculum now. And our math teams are working diligently on implementation and best practices within that curriculum. Finally, we'll continue to use student data and feedback for the purpose of finding opportunities for student agency, both in the classroom and school, and hopefully surface that agency and student voice in authentic ways throughout the building and our classrooms.
So wrapping up, just having a conversation around what are next steps. And so some of the conversations we've had really around proficiency and thinking about proficiency as kind of the floor. Where do we want every student to get? And we want every student to be able to meet that benchmark target. But then also we want growth. We want to make sure everybody's growing, a year's worth of growth. We have students that show up, very high achieving students that show up knowing kind of what's planned for the day already. They already have that information. And so how do we make sure that we're still growing that group of students? And then, I think you heard many people acknowledge the fact that we have some striving learners that need to grow more than a year's worth of growth in a year. And so lots of big challenges in there. But I hope that what you hear is that really wanting to make sure that we get to proficiency, but then also all kids are growing, and they're growing not only academically, but also just as humans, and feel that they belong. So as we move forward with that, really thinking about how do we set some 1-year and 3-year benchmark targets of where are we trying to get and what's logical. So working on those things. The Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee has an accountability report. Climate and screening data, that information that we get back from kids about how they feel about being in school and that sense of belonging, to match those things together. And then some progress monitoring as we work through the year with Glacial Drumlin, and MG21 as they work on their 100-day plans. That's why the timing's a little weird because we're working in quarters on or in trimesters on those kind of, and thinking about that. But from a bigger perspective, I'm really thinking about how do we move forward in a continuous improvement type of a leadership development. So the thing we've done immediately this year is moved into NextPath, which is a data visualization tool. We have a lot of data. We're not lacking it, right? But as you heard them talk about teachers with their time and how you look at things, how can we make it as easy as possible to look at data in a meaningful way, which doesn't mean creating a lot of spreadsheets and your own graphs, but trying to make that more timely and useful. And you heard them talk about formative assessment, what's happening in the unit, but then also those bigger summative assessments and how do you look at both of those. And then moving into a process through ASA, it's called SAIL. And Monona Grove will be hosting that in August for the region. It's a 2-year commitment from a continuous improvement plan, and working with them through that process. Really thinking about where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years, but what are all the adults going to do in 100-day cycles in order to get to that? So tight planning, feasible, and co-created. So their leadership teams will co-create those with teachers and administrators together about what do we see as our biggest opportunities for improvement from a root cause analysis, and then what do we think is going to matter? And then how do we check in on that on a regular basis? So if we're going down the wrong track, we don't spend too much time there. So really looking forward to moving into some of those things. I'll open it up for questions.
So before we open up to questions, I just want to say thank you to everybody for this. Speaking for myself, and I'll be curious what other board members think, this is by far the best presentation we've ever gotten on student achievement and student data and curriculum instruction district-wide and the school level. And so I want to say thank you for that, and also thank you for your honesty around, hey, here's what's going well, but also there are things that aren't going well, and we need to know it. And I had shared this a number of times in my tenure here, but it's true whether or not we know it and are willing to look at it and willing to see it. But if we're willing to look at it and see it, then we can make improvements and track that progress. I also want to really thank Dr. Frederick and Lisa. I saw the kind of preview of this presentation at Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee a couple of weeks ago, and I sent what can only be described as a 37,000 bullet point feedback to Tanya about changes and adjustments I thought would be necessary for the board, including the request that the administrators come and be here co-presenting on what's happening in your buildings and representing what's happening in your buildings. And I'm grateful for you all receiving that feedback, putting it into practice, and I think it made for a much richer presentation because you're there, right? And you want it, and you're living it, and you're doing it. And so to hear it and see it from you all makes a huge difference. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for, like I said, what I, hands down, is the best achievement presentation we've gotten in my 4 years on the board now. And with that, I'll open it for questions. Yes, Rochelle.
I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, that's I think my phone. Yeah, thank you for coming and sharing the data with us. And I was on TLE, and so we heard it early on. And I'm really, really happy that you guys have some good plans, and I think some really smart plans in place as to how you're going to address the areas that we need to work a little bit differently at. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the new data points at the end of I guess at the end of the year to some extent, but I also think it makes it really nice for the teachers to be able to say, hey, all this work I'm putting in, look at what's happening. And so as long as we're moving forward, I feel like it brings everybody even closer together. So yeah, it's never good to hear when scores aren't what you hope, but it's also great to know where we're weak and where we can then have strategies to improve. So I think it sounds like we're on a good journey.
Peter.
A little background. I want to congratulate the DPI. Because, well, I'll tell you, every year we come in here and we look at these report card data, and I'll tell you, it doesn't mean very much. Because if you take the scores and divide them by the economic status of the students, in other words, you divide it by the number of, essentially the number of free and reduced lunch in every district, you get, for almost every district, you get a number that's within 1 sigma of that adjusted number. In other words, the report cards in the past were just telling us what the economic status of those districts were, with a high degree of precision. This is the first year I did the same thing, looked at it, this is the first year where that's not the case. And it was noted that the 2023 numbers are not, 23-24 numbers not comparable to previous years. That is 100% true, because although it's now still a factor, it explains only about 25% of the score, not 85% of the score. So the DPI has done a very good job with this adjustment. And the statement that prior years aren't comparable this year is true. And there'll be a lot of districts in the state this month who are looking at this and going, who used to be way up in the top and are looking and now are average. And there'll be a lot of districts that were down in the corner and now have moved up this year. And so it's time that we can take these scores seriously and take what they mean seriously. And it's a very good change. It's a very positive change for all of us in education. So I don't want to underestimate the importance of this change that we've seen. In the past, when you've adjusted in Monona Grove, we've been an average, we've always been within 1 standard deviation of average for our status. And this year is not any different. We're an average school district and we need to exceed that.
Eric.
Thank you, everybody, for presenting. There's 2 things that concern me. One is our Black student performance and scores in the schools. And it's a constant thing year after year. I've been on the board it's my 3rd term. It's always something that's in question. So I'm wondering, as a district, if we really need to look at, what have we not been doing? Because that issue has been consistent. And it's hard to continually see it as an educator and as someone on the board and know that there's no change in it. And I know there's a lot of whys, and we've tried a lot of things, but I think we really need to think maybe a little differently of some of the things we have not been doing. Just a concern of mine. The other concern of mine is just GDS overall, specifically the areas of growth and the target population. And Peter is absolutely right with the scores of not being comparable. But if you do look at a comparable like Senate compared to GDS, which is another middle school, because I know middle schools are usually different, Senate's growth score is 74.6, GDS 46.1. Senate, it's a Madison middle school, for those that don't know. Target scores 57, GDS 41. So now, with the first time seeing these numbers, I trust in the district and you, Tanya, to prioritize this, like you had the action plan, the rapid plan to do something about them. I have a daughter that's going there, and
Same.
Now I also want to say, scores tell one part of the story; they don't tell everything. But it was a little concerning to see those. So.
Yes, Susan.
I just wanted to, again, thank Elizabeth and Tanya and those that came tonight. We actually did, years ago, used to have a board workshop. I think Reed probably remembers that. And each of the administrators from each of the schools would come and talk to us about their data and the numbers. We haven't done that in years. And so when we had this excellent presentation at Teaching, Learning, and Equity, and again, this started last year, and I wasn't a member of that committee then, and the place to go and learn as a board member was watching that committee. So one of the first questions I asked when they did this presentation, which was absolutely excellent, was, so normally the chair brings that information to the board. And I said, how are you going to bring this back to the board? And our superintendent said, I will be bringing this to the board. So again, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for addressing the fact that we need to be able to see this, to be able to be supported in moving ahead and understanding, one, where are we right now? And where do we want to be? How can we make ourselves better, and where do we really need to improve? Where do we need to focus? This is what they've always taught us continuous improvement is all about. We look at where we are, we look at what we understand, and we look at where we want to go. And to be feeling like we're back immersed in that environment is very, very encouraging. And they did this in front of the community, not just the board. So again, anybody that wants to see this again can just clue in and look. Thank you. Again, this is really a huge step in communication, collaboration, and reaching out. And I sincerely appreciate it.
Together, so appreciate them all.
I have a question. Go ahead, Philip.
With the renorming of the scores, is there anything beyond what has already been discussed that's interesting to know or important to know with what's changed compared to the past?
Yeah, Dr. Hype, do you want to answer that question as far as with the renorming? Do you have DPI wasn't, they have a report on it. A really nice memo. We got the memo when the scores came. So there wasn't a lot of pre-warning or things like that. And so I think, just changing how the weights went through with the report card, but the renorming, I think we had some of the highest norms in Wisconsin for many, many states. When you would talk to, from a federal level, you could take the same child's test score and in Iowa, they could be, that might be a bad example. So no one quote me on any of this, but I know like some states cut scores, they're all different, right? So it's all kind of relative. And so our cut scores were some of the highest in the country. At levels of proficiency, we were looking less proficient than others. And so this is a little bit to normalize that also, as opposed to just using the NAEP cut scores, was my understanding.
Yes. National assessment, so similar to, like, every state has their own assessment, but then there's a national assessment as well that you get selected to participate in. Yeah, Janice.
Question. Tanya, I think you said NextPath is a data tool that the district is using. What data is in it?
So it pulls, every night, it pulls data out. So it would be our iReady data. It would be students' forward tests, ACT score, their test results. So you have it you can look at it a lot of different ways. There's also behavior data in there. So when Chris talked about, we know we have less behavior incidences than last year. You can compare year to year. You can compare grade levels. It's just a lot of different ways that you can slice and dice data at a very simple way. In addition, as we have students that are working towards increasing their benchmarking and we're doing some progress monitoring, you can put the progress monitoring data in there. Lots of things. So
It sounds like a really powerful tool.
it is a powerful tool. We're just getting going with it. And as the years progress, the reports that come to the Teaching and Learning and Equity Committee, a lot of them will come right out of there because it puts it in a format that's very easy to digest and to work on. So for everybody.
Easy data.
Yeah, a lot of complication to it, right? And the power comes in the interpretation, right?
Sure.
And analysis, and what do you do with it?
Right.
That's been a helpful tool. Some teachers are using it. A lot of it we have just with the coordinators and directors and the psychs, elementary, digging deep into it as they think about early literacy and Act 20 expectations. So
Thank
it can take some time, but it's heading in the right direction.
A few questions. First, a comment and a compliment, and I would be remiss, Mitch, if I didn't give a compliment to your 9th and 10th grade staff who have done an excellent job in perpetuating really significant growth for youth, particularly youth who have had either stagnant or negative growth coming into you. And so I want to really name that because I think whatever those staff are doing, it's incredible and awesome, and keep it up. And please let them know that on behalf of the board, we are very, very, very grateful for their hard work in getting students where they need to be as they enter into 11th grade and work on taking the ACT. So thank you for that. Question for elementary, and I think Krista, you as well. I think something that is a really interesting and important bright spot is around the growth of students with disabilities. And I'm curious your perspective on what do you think accounts for that, number one, and then number two, how do we take those lessons learned and then support, everybody in sort of applying what is obviously what works in an elementary setting, not necessarily the same in secondary, but certainly there are things that are consistently transferable. So kind of a two-part question there. And yeah.
I can have these two answer too, because I know what's going on in the building. I would say that our work around inclusive best practice is really where it needs. We've made a lot of progress at the elementary level. So our cohorts of students coming in have that sense of rightful presence. Just simply increasing access to universal instruction from 4K on up has had a huge impact. The work we're doing around specially designed instruction is not unique to the middle school, but I think it's maybe we're a few steps ahead with elementary in terms of like how to get creative with specially designed instruction in an inclusive way, and then students having access to those foundational resources and universal instruction overall. I think that's probably the number one factor, right? Like we've at least gotten everyone through the door and in the spaces and know that they belong in our learners in the classrooms. And I think that's probably the biggest factor. And I don't know if Andrew, you'd want to add anything else to that, but I think that's something we've been paying attention to within our growth, and we know we need to see even more growth. Like we need to keep that ball rolling. But that is what we've been spending a lot of time and energy on in recent years.
That's great.
I think the alignment, so you've heard us talk about co-planning before, and so aligning our special education teachers with a team or a grade level is super important to this work as well, because when they're sitting in a group talking about instruction, they're using the collective, right, to think about ways they're going to meet the range of learners in that cohort, and so that expertise is shared amongst all the teachers, so it's less in isolation, and just give a lot of credit to the teachers that are doing that work and engaged in that work, both from the special education side of things to the classroom teachers to make a lot of the work accessible, and also with scaffolds and such that we can do, but that's the work.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Question around, let's go to the middle school for a quick minute. So I think a couple of things, Chris, that were really exciting for me to hear. One is obviously increase in attendance and decrease in disciplinary referrals and infractions. If kids aren't there, they cannot learn, right? And if kids are having behavioral difficulties, either within the classroom or being removed from the classroom as a result of that, they also can't learn, right? So I think that's a huge point of kudos that I think I just really want to emphasize and highlight how important that is. Also that sense of belongingness, right? So you've got, I feel like I want to be there. I feel like I'm connected there. So I'm showing up, and because I feel connected, I'm going to engage more. And so I think that to me, you've got like the trifecta of all of sort of the soft skills, if you will, in order to have achievement happen. The other side of that, obviously, is then the curriculum and instruction side. And so my question is, I realized fairly recently, which was surprising to me, that we were still using like a Lucy Calkins-based ELA curriculum at the middle school, which was surprising for a variety of reasons, but particularly now with the emphasis of science of reading. And so I heard you reference earlier around taking a look at ELA, but I was wondering either you, Chris, or Lisa, if you could talk more specifically about what that is and what that looks like and how we ensure that we have a high-quality, evidence-based curriculum at the middle school.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
You're welcome.
So I will say that when the middle school made it switch from a resource that was no longer in print and did their piloting about 6 or so years ago and chose units of study. Part of that was pre-science of reading being amped back up, and right or wrong.
Sorry, the science knew, it was, yes, yes.
That, you know.
Yeah, that's right, Lisa. Yep.
And some of the goals were students reading more and writing more, and the workshop model that Units of Studies was predicated on really allowed students more opportunity to read things that they were excited to read, not just having to pull things from an anthology where everyone read the same short story, everyone read the same poetry selections, everyone read the same, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that did have that desired impact. However, also, you need very skilled, trained teachers to pull off high-quality mini lessons and make sure that the workshop model is running effectively. So what does the review look like now, right? We've had a high number of teacher turnover, and maybe it's even teachers staying at GDS but switching grade levels or switching content areas. And it has been hard, feels a little bit like chasing a tail a little bit to make sure you've got people that are trained and committed in those resources. So we're talking with the different grade levels, starting with 8th grade, about their experience, what's working, what's not, what are some things that they've tried supplementary, to see if we need to open up the process all over again for an all-new piloting, or are there things that we can tighten up and improve upon that they've already pulled in additionally to units of study. So we'll see where it goes, but the conversation still is anchored on grade level expectations, understanding what those standards are asking kids to achieve in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, making sure that our teachers understand how to get kids to that and building their capacity as well.
So are we looking at new curricular materials though to implement in the near future?
So this year right now, because it's hard to do.
Well, yes.
Yes, but if you mean like.
Yeah, going into next year. Okay, great, thank you. Last question from me for now, but I know how to get a hold of you all, and you know that I will. Is I think one of the challenges with report card data is that it's slow moving, it's not nimble, right? And it comes out, like, these are scores that are really like last late winter, early spring, right? And so like this group of students are different already, right? Based on all the experiences that happen between now and then. And I think for our schools that are exceeding expectations, like that's okay, right? You're doing the things, you're keeping pace on that. I think for Chris, and I guess also you, Lisa, for GDS, what kind of nimble sources of data are we using? And then how can the board expect to what should we expect to see in those data points, knowing that this time next year when we're looking at report cards, I don't expect an entire 180, right? Now all of a sudden we've got a 20-point bump. Like that's not how this data works. And so what nimble data points are you looking at, and how will the board know that we're being successful towards the goals?
Yeah, as a leadership team, including Tanya and Lisa and Krista, we sat down and we've created benchmark goals for us for the iReady.
Great.
So we have goals for winter iReady. And also our kids are creating goals for their growth in iReady as well. So I forgot to mention that. So we're really using our progress monitoring tool of iReady in winter and in spring as far as actual numbers.
Yeah.
And then we'll continue with our belonging indexes and our student base data, and as well as just like feedback to teachers and conversations with teachers about what's going on in classrooms. Grade level assessments, content assessments, and just try to keep abreast of.
Great. I love that the youth are setting their own goals. I want everyone to do that. Every kid should be setting their own academic goals. All right, so that's the end of my questions. Any other questions Thank you again. This was fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to seeing our growth and progress as we move forward. Are you ready? Next up is the MG21 annual report. I heard that finally. It's a hot mic over there. I don't know how you're wearing that scarf. It is like the heat of 1,000 suns in here. But it's also very dapper. You look quite dapper, but it's.
This is preemptive.
Oh,
It's cold outside.
I see.
Anyway, thank you, Elizabeth.
Yes. Nice to see you again.
And the rest of the board for making time for us on the agenda. I'm Tom Stolper. I'm the president of the MG21 Governance Board. I have three colleagues here tonight. Sue Carr is back here. Sandy Homburg is also here. Sandy is the treasurer of the board. And last but not least, Elizabeth Wheeler, who is the secretary of the board. So as I believe most of you know, MG21 operates under a contract, a charter contract between the MG21 Governance Board and the school district as the authorizer. As a part of that contract, we are required to present to you annually an accountability report. So that's what we're here to do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the brains of the operation and let her go ahead.
Hi, Rebecca. Nice to see you again.
Thanks so much for having us here. We appreciate the opportunity to come before this board tonight and share our annual accountability report for the 2023-24 school year. MG21, aka Monona Grove Liberal Arts Charter School for the 21st Century, was founded in 2010 to offer an alternative educational model for students in the Monona Grove School District. MG21 uses a project-based learning model, or PBL, to deliver its curriculum to our students. Project-based learning is an inquiry-based learning process in which students are engaged in designing, planning, investigating, researching, and presenting their own real-world and personally meaningful projects. PBL is messy, and it doesn't fit into tidy, neat boxes. Project-based learning asks students to drive their own education. The 21 in our name refers to the 21st century skills that ground our program: critical thinking, collaboration, communication, curiosity, commitment, and community and citizenship. As Tom said, we're an instrumentality charter school for the Monona Grove School District, which means that our students are Monona Grove School students and our staff are Monona Grove employees. As a charter school, our contract asks that we come before you and present this report. And the goal really is for us to try to present a robust picture of our educational community. I included at the beginning our school mission and our pillars, just to kind of make sure that the board, new members, and also the community know what we're all about. MG21 was designed to provide a student-centered educational community for independent learners, which is to give students the skills they need to walk their path in life. And we have 4 key pillars: educate the whole person, use that through rigorous academic and social emotional skills, and do that through the lens of project-based inquiry, and build and connect with community. I included some basic demographic data. What I want to call out here is that we are continuing to grow. So last year we were at 88 students. This year we're at 94 students. One of the things that I included here is just some different demographic data comparing MG21, again, to GDS and to the high school. MG21 is unique because we are a 612 school. It makes us a weird hybrid in the state. And so you'll see that our data, when we're looking at it, we have to compare both not only to GDS and to the high school. One of the things that continues to be something of note is the fact that we do have a disproportionality in our students with IEPs. And so we're at 25.6% last year compared to Glacial Drumlin at 6.9 and the high school at 8.5. I want to say, though, that it's really important to consider, and I think this is important for the community to know, that's not because our school is a lesser school. It's not because our school is less rigorous or an easier option. It's because I think largely we're a smaller educational community and our project-based model is appealing. So I think that's important to kind of point out. So how are our students doing? I included a lot of different performance measures. A few things that I want to speak to. As other folks have talked about, belongingness and connection is really important for students. And for us, we administer something that called the HOPE survey, which we've done for the whole time that we've been open. And this survey really tracks how students feel about belongingness, safety, personal respect, confidence, engagement, and kind of a growth mindset. And we continue to see that being an important hallmark for our students. This year, as everyone's already kind of called out, the norming changed. So we couldn't compare like how did our students do last year on forward testing and this year because things have changed. But we did include our forward test data as compared to like the state average data. And what you'll see is what we have known, which is that when it comes to our English language arts data, our ELA data, we are doing better than the state average. However, when it comes to the math data, we have room for growth. And we've known that. We've been working on that issue for quite a while, and as lots of schools are. Our pre-ACT data and is on par with the state for the most part, again, with the exception of math. And then our ACT data is also strong and on par with the state. School report card. So the school report card does not accurately represent our school, and for lots of different reasons. And so I don't want to go into a lot of detail. I put a couple kind of key points here. We still really struggle to navigate this as a representation of our school. One of the things is that because of our small size, a lot of data is not reported. And so in that targeted growth area, we have no data because our cell sizes are too small. And so then that skews kind of the overall pie chart of our data and weights different things differently. Also, as the 612 model, if you look at like schools at a glance in the state, they have high schools, junior high schools, middle schools, and then they have what's called a combined elementary, secondary, and then they have elementary schools. Well, we're none of those things. And they wedge us into the elementary, secondary category, but we don't have a third grade, and so that skews our on track to graduation data. So it's a weird thing for us to be a 612 public school in the state. All of that's, the last thing I would say about the report card data for us too is that none of our arts, foreign language, any of that data is reported on the school report card because we don't report it in the same way that other schools do. Because of our project-based learning model, the data is considered part of the project-based learning process. And so we don't say, oh, the student's in an art class or a drama class or a Spanish class, although they're doing those things at our school. So a couple other things I want to just call out on the performance measures. We're doing really well as far as parents being involved in our school. We're doing another kind of hallmark of our school program is our focus on student wellness and our outdoor education program, especially at the middle campus. And finally, I think another thing that I'd like to call out, go on, Katie, is our service data. We have 100% of our students across 612 participating in at least 4 or more service opportunities. And I think that's a really key, critical part of our school community. We also have really leaned into the youth apprenticeship program and the Start College Now program to provide opportunities for our students. Restorative justice continues to be a foundational piece of our school philosophy and our school program. 100% of our students participate in restorative justice and contribute to restorative practices in our school. One of the things that you'll notice if you look at our student behavior data is our numbers were higher last year, and that is an area of growth for us. We had an anomaly of a year with some significant behavior issues. And when we went to think about what things do we need to put in place for this year, that was a real focus for us, is how do we create kind of upfront and front load preventative things to improve that data. So last year, some of our continuous improvement goals were around, again, piloting some new math programs. At the upper campus, we tried out illustrative math. At the middle campus, we piloted mid-school math starting in February of last year. It went really well. We also scaffolded our student, how we do our PBL, so that we had kind of a guided step, if you will, for students who are new to project-based learning, and then the full-on independent student-led projects. We continued to expand our student support program and kind of how we're delivering student support. And then we worked at kind of how can we best navigate our shared leadership model. And again, we also expanded our co-planning and expanded our pathfinding, which is our college and career readiness. So this year, what are we doing? This is our first year of having an in-house administrator. We have a school director. And that's a big deal for us. It still allows us to maintain our teacher-led shared leadership model, but it gives us an opportunity to really navigate a lot of things in-house. We've continued to work on our math program. We shifted away temporarily from illustrative math because we saw that there was a big gap. And so we're using a program called Mathematic for our algebra and geometry. And then we have fully piloted, implementing mid-school math at the middle campus. And that's going really well. So, report card, what's our response? Right now, we're in the process of doing some of the same things that Chris mentioned. So we are digging into our heat map data and kind of looking at what are we seeing on the state assessments, and are those accurate gaps? Or are those not? One of the things is if you see, 75% of sixth graders missed a question, that could be 4 kids in our school. So that is just something that we have to look at. Okay, is that really a question, a gap that we have in our curriculum? And how does that line up with what we're actually teaching and what we're seeing in the classrooms? The other thing that we're looking at is continuing to implement our math curriculum. As you all said, it takes a while. It's going to take a while for us to see improvement in that area. We are also looking at our 612 scope and sequence of our whole curriculum and how that lines up with our competencies, and making sure we have a chunk of new staff. Largely our middle campus is almost all new staff this year. And so we're looking at making sure that all staff are on board with understanding what our competencies are and kind of how we assess beginning, developing, proficient, and advanced. Next for us is going to be looking at trying to create a more detailed portrait of an MG21 graduate. I think that's just a really important piece of the puzzle for our school. And then also looking at creating more student self-assessment opportunities. And lastly, creating more spaces for our staff to share best practices with each other. A couple other things that we have on here. Our first 100 days, again, like I said, we looked at that data from last year and thought, what do we need to put in place so that this year starts out really strong? And like other schools in the district, we focused a lot on being really clear about expectations and really trying to front load a lot of things so that the year started off really strong for our students. We added a more intentional middle campus foreign language program that is happening this year. That's allowing students at the middle campus to explore. First trimester was Spanish, this trimester is French and ASL, and then next trimester will be German. And we've spent a lot of time focused on like building our staff because we have a big chunk of new staff. We're working a lot on collaboration, communication, and creating our staff culture. And then shifting kind of how we're doing the our student leadership in our school. We've always had lots of student leadership opportunities, but we wanted to be a lot more intentional with that and leverage our student kind of activism and our student voice. And so we've created a specific time for student leadership teams to meet on our Wednesdays, and all of our students are involved in one of 4 different student leadership teams across 612. I also have included data as I do. One thing I'm hoping I can talk Katie into clicking on is the first hyperlink. So staff felt it was important that you see just a few like smattering of like independent student projects. So these are, in our school, we have kind of 3 different kinds of student projects, our project-based learning. We have teacher-led projects, which are more like a traditional teacher-led class that has a project and at the heart of it. We have community-led projects where we're bringing in folks from the community to do projects with students. And then we have independent student-led projects. So this first one is the Little Free Library. This was actually a guided project where students designed and built their own little free libraries. The next one is a 3-wheeler bike that a student designed and welded and created himself. We have students that do a lot of writing projects, and we had a couple different short story projects last year. We had in our makerspace a retro pie project. We had a number of research projects. One that was really meaningful was a student who themselves kind of struggled with ADHD, did a huge research project and education piece on that for the staff. And then all of our 8th graders complete a legacy project as part of their graduation. And so these are just a few of the legacy projects. A zine on wellness. And we have one student who over the time in the middle campus created a Monona version of The Amazing Race. That's really a lot of fun that the kids do at the end of the year. So that was a great project. We had another student who painted a mural in our student support office. A student who did a book drive to beef up our anime and manga section of our school library. Another student who did some design work at the middle campus or at the middle campus restrooms and at the MGH locker rooms. And then we had our first ever school dance that students did. So these are just a few like samples of like some of the student-led projects that kids are doing. And then I also included the information just about our curriculum and also results of parent and staff and student surveys and our final budget.
Rebecca said we're a little bit weird. We think weird is good.
Love that. Questions? Yes, Susan.
Rebecca, would you just take a minute and tell the board just very briefly about the graduation ceremony? I know you always invite the board members to come, and that's just an incredible experience for all of us. And actually, I've brought physicians to that workshop, to the graduation, and they've been incredibly impressed with, from that a healthcare point of view, what you can see in that ceremony.
So one of the things that we try to do is, in giving our seniors an opportunity to demonstrate those 21st century skills as part of their readiness for graduation is kind of a threefold thing. Our students present their senior portfolio. It's a public presentation where they've put together examples of their student work over time, and a series of reflective essays, and then they give a public presentation to our board and their families. Second thing is we do kind of a rite of passage, if you will. All of our seniors go on a senior wilderness hike. We work as part of our service on the Ice Age Trail, and then we hike the Ice Age Trail. The seniors backpack on the Ice Age Trail, around 21 miles, because I'm kind of cheesy like that. And then the third thing is they give a public graduation address. And so for graduation, each student writes a graduation speech, and they kind of come up and they can tell their story or whatever they'd like to share about their educational journey. So those are kind of the ways that we hope that our students are demonstrating their readiness for graduation.
I love your school and what you guys are doing. I mean, I think it really, it educates the whole student. But the math stuff, it's real. And I'm glad you're kind of rethinking, or at least trying some of the traditional stuff a little bit. I know it's really hard when you're having them come up with the projects to be able to then have it hit all the points. It's a big lift. How are you feeling like, what do you have kind of, what is your next step goals? Like how will you know that you're getting closer to where you want to be?
So what we've done with math is, again, mid-school math at the middle campus, and then at the upper campus, we're teaching traditional algebra and geometry. And then our students that want advanced math, all of our students do financial literacy, and then our students who want advanced math are having the opportunity to take advanced algebra or pre-calc at the main high school. Thank you. And so that's been a really great opportunity for our students. And so I think one of the benchmarks for us is seeing the success of that cohort of students. So right now we have, I think, 8 students that are taking advanced math at the main high school out of our junior, senior class. And seeing the fact that they are able to be successful, engage with that curriculum, and have a really strong experience, I think that tells us that we're moving in the right direction. I think also then looking at our ACT data and seeing that growth there is telling us that we're continuing to improve.
Thank you.
Yeah, Peter.
I just want to say thank you again for all the work you've been, you started doing this almost when I started on the board. And every year it's always a pleasure to hear what goes on. I want to thank you and publicly acknowledge the dedication and the thought and the hard work that goes into making MG21 a success. And I'm going to ask my same question. What lessons are there that the rest of the district should take from MG21? What have you learned? Particularly from the middle, I'm particularly interested in the middle campus because this is new.
Well,
Had a few years with it.
Like Chris said, it's a lot. So I think some of the things that we've learned, the importance of really being one school, and how the upper campus students can learn from middle campus and vice versa. We have a lot of opportunities where we're trying to do community circles and different activities. So I think that's one thing. I think, one of the lessons that we know is that every school knows, though, is how important relationships are for engagement. For us, it's really the heart of our school, and it's the reason that we are intentionally small and kind of create things the way that we do. So I would think that, another thing is the power of being able to personalize pathways for individual students. So we have, because of our small size, we're really able to say, okay, what is the next thing on a student's path? and how can we create the opportunity for the student to engage with that and move forward. And I think that's, a really valuable thing that we've been able to do, is really personalizing the student's pathway forward.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Is that new this year, that students are able to take classes at the main high school for advanced math?
No, they've always been able to, but we're being much more intentional with how we're doing that, and we're having a lot more students that feel more confident to do that because of the shift in our program. So, back when initially, our math program was 100% like inquiry based. And so the math classes were centered around an essential question and built around a project. And that's great, but we saw big gaps in student learning because math is one of those subjects that you kind of need to do in the traditional way.
Yeah. I think, Rebecca, I love when you guys come. I love your annual report. I always appreciate the level of detail that's in it. I always appreciate that you come in and you're like, hey, this is where it's going well, this is not. And what I especially appreciate about MG21 in now the few years that I've, sat at this side of the table listening to this presentation is I'm always impressed with your ability to hold steadfast to the integrity of what you want MG21 to be, right? What it is, what it represents, right? And the importance of having that type of alternative approach to education for youth, right? And at the same time, be able to be here and say, and I remember 2 years ago when it was like, Rebecca, what are we doing about? And you're like, we're gonna get some more training and we're gonna get some more curriculum, Elizabeth. And it's really nice to see kind of the fruits of that work coming. And even though I know the report card data is what it is, you all are an interesting place. I'll use interesting instead of weird. But the numbers are better, Rebecca. I mean, they are. And the fact that you have youth that are confident enough now in their math skills to say, hey, you know what? I know that if I need to walk into a 4-year college, like these are the things I need on my transcript. Like that's huge instructional growth. And so I just really wanted to name that. Like I remember the first time that I asked you, Rebecca, at this table, like what are we doing? And you're like, I know, I hear it, we're doing it. And so I just want to say kudos to you. Curriculum instruction is a long game. The numbers will get there. I know that they will, but it's really nice to see the growth. And I see it, it's there, and that's awesome.
Appreciate that. That's the beauty of the small charter school, is that we can monitor and adjust very quickly because we are a charter school. And so, that's been, having that ongoing continuous improvement. Every year, we can kind of look and make the changes that we need to make in real time. And sometimes mid-year, like we did last year, we realized, we've got to shift, we've got to go into this different math curriculum, and we did it
I remember
mid-year.
Lisa came down and gave you guys a bunch of training, and
Everybody thought we were bonkers to do it right in the middle of the school year, but we knew we needed to do it.
well, it's the benefit of being nimble. One recommendation I would like to see just for next year as you're thinking about it is, now that you have sort of a trajectory of kids that are feeling more confident in terms of taking those classes, like the same way that you shared with us the college classes that kids are taking, I would really love to see some numbers on, hey, year one, we had one student who came, and now we've got 4 students who are taking classes in that area. I think that would be a really good success metric for you to share. So
Absolutely.
again, Rebecca.
Thank you all.
Just one more quick question. The other thing that might be very interesting is, I know that you do your annual report and you always invite us to come and be able to meet the students, but for them to see a student. So at graduation this year, I was sitting with a student who was really excited. He was going to Lawrence University in Appleton. The other truth that you don't talk about as much is the mental health support that you provide each and every student. And that's why I encourage you to go to the graduations. This is an experience of a lifetime to be able to watch that. At the regular graduation, again, we just got to get all these kids across. This is just, again, it's been an experience of a lifetime for me, and it's something that we should all be able to see.
at the graduation ceremony, and I do encourage all of you to come. It's very moving, even for somebody like me. But I will tell you, I have had 2 people come up to me in different years after the graduation ceremony and say to me, not only does MG21 educate students, but we save lives. That's big.
Thank you for saying that, because I was a little nervous about saying it myself. They will tell you that fact in that event.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for your continued support.
Thank you.
All right, last discussion item on the agenda today is Asher to give us our school safety and security report. Welcome. What? Oh, I'm sorry.
First, we're actually
Let's
going to
do-
do some policy.
Can we actually, wait, point of order, are you okay if we let Asher go? Because we've been here a long time, and I think he's our last
You
presenter
can
today,
change
right?
the order of the agenda, Tanya. Yes.
Is that okay?
I just,
Oh.
we were just
Okay.
going to send him back to sit longer.
It's already 9 o'clock, Asher.
I can talk pretty loud, so I'm trying to make sure I'm not being too loud here. Started at the end.
That's it,
so,
questions?
Yeah, any questions?
None, thank you
Just
very
start there, yeah, all right. Have a good night.
Nailed it.
Oh, I can? Oh, fantastic. All right, so thanks for coming, or thanks for having me here. I guess you guys are here all the time. I wanted to start by kind of introducing myself formally to you guys. I've met a lot of you individually and talked to you a little bit, but just to get you to know who I am and my background and why I'm here. So if you didn't know, which maybe you do, but I split my time between the Monona Grove School District and the Middleton Cross Plains School District. So I support both districts in a safety and security role, overseeing all the different safety and security things that are going on there. Just a little bit about my background, criminal justice. I was a former military and law enforcement. So most of my career I spent in law enforcement. At about 15 years there. Part of that, I was an SRO, and as an SRO, I really found my passion for working with schools and school safety. I promoted out of that, went to sergeant. As a patrol sergeant, I was a lead instructor in a lot of things, and I developed a lot of programs to enhance school safety with crisis management stuff and active threat response, things like that. So it all evolved into this. The picture I put up there is my family, just to kind of give you my why of why I'm here. That's why. I'm very passionate about schools, but also I like to see my family once in a while, and law enforcement can be a tough career. So if you look, I spent 21 months in the Middle East, met my wife, and 4 days after I got married to my wife, I got on an airplane and went to the Middle East for 18 months, so that's how we started. And then you pile that on 22 years of doing that kind of thing. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but in this world, it's Monday through Friday. I don't have to work nights very often at all, and I never really get cold, wet, or hungry, so it's fantastic. So anyway, I'm also a dad, which is important because when we talk about school safety, I understand what it's like to be a parent and want to know what's going on with the schools and understanding what our kids could potentially be faced with. So just some things, I'm going to talk a little bit about the initial work that I've done since I've been here. I started here in July, so not a ton of time, and I have half time here. So to piggyback on what other people have been saying, it's a lot to wrap my head around everything that's going on in 2 school districts and to be able to guide that every day. So there's some things we're going to talk about. So starting back in July, I wanted to start by meeting all the different school principals, getting to know the principals, develop a relationship with them, see where they're at, see what the buildings are at for school, looking through any of the safety protocols or anything that they needed, did my own assessments of those things, and begin planning for improvement back then. So a lot of it was just getting oriented to the buildings. There's a lot to learn. So, and then planning out safety drills, consulting with the police departments. Luckily, I had relationships with a lot of police departments around here already, so I was able to easily move into collaborating with them on any of the emergency response stuff. So then we started getting into August. I'm a big-time trainer. I was a trainer in a lot of different things, and it's very important for me to really have a school understand and staff understand how to react to any sort of situation. So really developing those plans and wanting to be that trainer for the schools rather than just overseeing things. I like to go out to the schools and be there with the staff, teach them and guide them in how we're training students and things like that. So I get into the next couple of months, assessment of student training, what was going on, any updating that needed to be done for best practices based on my background. We did this thing called safety dots, which if you're not familiar, if you're in one of the classrooms, so it's where me or one of the other SROs will go into the school and in the classrooms determine where the safe spots of those rooms are. So if we have an active threat, the staff member can say, get to the safety dots, and they're basically a corner of a room where we can get everybody back behind those. So that was important to do. Establishing a consistent protocol across the district that we are maintaining what we need to be doing for drills, updating staff training and best practices, assisting with debriefing drills. We do debriefs, we learn something from every one of them, so I like to be there to debrief those and go through what we could do better. And then some communication with families. I did 2 presentations to families. We also have on our website as well now, where I did a slide deck and had me just kind of being the talking head in the corner for that. But to explain our safety protocols, like I said, I'm a parent, so having the knowledge of what I want to know what's going on in the schools and what we're doing to keep our kids safe and what these different things mean. If I get an email that says the school went into a hold today, things like that, what does that mean? So putting together that presentation so that they understand that. All right, some of the initiatives that I have here coming into this is I want to take lead in all the staff training for safety. I think that as a principal, I mean, the things that they were telling you guys tonight, I couldn't come up with that stuff. So they have a lot of different hats to wear, right? So I'm here to help with the safety part of that. I could take over the safety portion of that and really be that person that they can rely on and reflect on to help drive the safety of our schools. I'll talk a little bit more as we go here, but situation response team, so I lead the training in those. Addressing individual staff and student concerns is really important to me as well. You have teachers in various different rooms, and how does this work? How does that work? And I can give them a general protocol on how to react, but it may not seem like it fits to their room. So I'm really big on the staff members being able to reach out to me. I'll go to their classroom and we'll talk about a certain plan for their individual rooms. Being a thought partner for the district employees and principals, and then assuring that all of our safety systems, which we have a lot of great systems in the school, are working properly and functioning the way they should, and making sure that we're testing those things. So here's our protocols. This is the I Love You Guys Foundation. They have standard response protocols. These align with the other school districts in Dane County. And there's a big push for this nationwide. Many schools are going with this, and it's an all hazards approach. Hopefully you've seen this before, but just to explain to you a little bit more about what it all means. And the reasons we would use it: a classroom hold, could be a medical emergency, behavior incident. It's really just a reason that we need everybody to get into a classroom and kind of get out of the way. Instruction still continues. They keep doing the things they need to do, but they can get out of the way. Also included in that is a canine sweep. Obviously, we had a canine sweep this year, so we keep the kids out of the way and safe in a classroom. And continuing instruction while they're addressing something that's going on within the building. Building secure is we have something going on outside. We want it to stay outside, so we're securing our doors, bringing anybody that's out at recess or something like that back in, and securing the outside. Shelters weather, pretty straightforward. We've been practicing tornado drills since forever, but it's reinforcing that. Evacuate is your fire, gas leaks, could be any kind of hazardous situation that's inside the building. And we would evacuate for that. And then obviously the lockdown is an active threat scenario where we have a dangerous intruder that is inside our building. So happy to report, one of the things I track every month is that our schools are doing the drills they need to be doing. We're learning from each one of them, and that we are following the state requirements. MG is 100% right now, which is fantastic. So these are the drills that are required by the state. So at least 2 fire drills, at least 1 shelter, and an active threat that's mandatory to be done prior to December 31st. We are 100% compliance on that. I report them to the Office of School Safety. It's also reported to you guys. I think it's our next thing on the agenda. And then each drill we debrief with a situation response team. So what a situation response team is every school has a team that has some additional training in crisis management of something going on in that school. I go out to each school, we go through scenarios and kind of build upon what do we do in certain situations. I'll kind of test them and help guide them through things that they can do in those. Drills should never intentionally scare someone. I get that question a lot. Like, are we doing no notice drills or anything like that? We are not. Okay. I don't believe in scaring people. I think that the best way to learn how to deal with something is in an environment where you can understand the functions of the things without having those stress reactions that are going to close you off to being open-minded and to think through something. We'd have some modifications that I had for some drills that we were doing. I focus a lot with staff on decision-making, and rather than if we have a threat that we're only relying on escaping, if we only rely on something like escape, which is a good option sometimes, but if you think about situations even that we had locally where we had this individual outside at Mount Horeb, if we are only escaping, we could potentially run right into that. So I really focus on the decision-making and helping staff understand whatever information they have, here's the best practice and best decision that they can make. So we have some great systems here in MG. They are, I mean, we got the clock systems, we got the pull levers, we got every phone can activate the active threat system. We have a lot of great things in place. And it's just a matter of making sure that they work, that they're functioning, and that we're using them appropriately. So my own personal assessment has been very, very positive. I know a lot of school districts around. I work with a lot of school districts around the area, and their safety protocols that we have here are great, the automation. Each school has a building safety checklist that we do annually, and then I have planned right now a comprehensive safety school assessment with CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, federal agency that comes around and they do assessments. So we're going through that in February. If you haven't heard, Speak Up, Speak Out is I'm sure you've heard, yeah. So, but it's been a great tool to really help us get out in front of issues. If a kid is struggling with something, or a staff member, or a family member, or somebody wants to report something, it really helps us get out in front of that. We get those reports and they're vetted and sent to the right people, and we can get an appropriate response. Reunification is my next baby, if you will, to make sure that we are in a good place. Reunification is far more likely than a lot of the other things that we could have, because a reunification could be if we have a building evacuation that we can't go back to the building, gas leak, power outage, those sorts of things. We have to reunify those kids with their families in an appropriate way, so we're getting them to the correct person, and that we're making sure that we do our job there. So standard reunification method is also a program that's put on by the I Love You Guys Foundation. That's the current plan we have here. So my goal now is to make sure that all of our reunification team is really well trained in that, and that we know how to use it if we need to use it. Some school districts will have a specific building that we train at, and my goal here is that we can use this system in any school, because inevitably, if we have to go to reunification, families want their kids back, which we need to get them back to them. But if they know where the reunification site is before we're there and prepared to do that in a standard way, in an appropriate way, what happens is it's total chaos, and we're either going to have to move to another place, or we're going to need a significant level of involvement from emergency responders to help us get to that place and set up. So I would like to get to a place where we can use literally any building, so that and then build in some MOUs with other buildings that we can adjust if we need to, and choose the most appropriate spot. Oop, I don't know what I did there. Hit the wrong button. All right, try to keep it short and sweet. Slade, questions?
Thanks. What questions do you have? Yeah, Peter.
First of all, I'm really glad to see that we're doing the cybersecurity assessment. I think that's probably one of our biggest risks right now when you hear stories from other districts.
Oh, yes.
Never had the benefit of doing this myself. What does an active threat drill look like?
So if there's a threatening situation, an intruder that is either approaching our building with a weapon or inside the building with a weapon, there are systems in place that I have automation to them. So in every office, there's a pull lever. They can pull that lever. It activates an alarm system within the building. You actually have a clock on the wall behind me. Those clocks will flash a light. They will scroll a message. There's certain doors and thresholds within each building that are magnetized, that are held open by magnets. When that system is activated, those magnets turn off and they close and they lock. And the reason for that is to slow movement down of anything getting further into our building. If it slows everything going down into the building, but it won't restrict anybody from getting out of the building. Because I get that question a lot. That's actually a fire code thing as well. We need to make sure that people can get out. So when those doors close and lock, what I mean is they close and you can't get further into the building, so that we can't have a threat getting further in. But you can, if the students and staff choose to escape, they can always get out. So then in the individual classrooms, the teachers are trained to listen to what information they have. If you know where the threat is and it is not near you, escape is your best option. If you know where the threat is and it is near you, barricade is your best option. And one of the things I reinforce with staff is that it's a fact that no locked and barricaded door has been breached by an active threat. So being behind that locked door, keeping your classroom doors locked every day is a very effective way to keep our staff and students safe. And then on the other end of that, if they do not know, or if they do not know of any other information other than the active threat alarm just went off, I'm training them to barricade in place. Because what I don't want is for you to automatically escape the building and potentially run right into something like Mount Horeb, okay? So that's what it looks like. In the individual classrooms, it's all age appropriate. So the high school and middle schools, they're gonna help barricade, things like that, and you get to the older grades. When it gets down to the elementaries, the 4K, things like that, it's more of listen to the teacher, get to the safety dots, turn the lights off, be quiet, teacher barricades the door, make sure it's locked, and then all those other things are in place. Answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Philip?
You mentioned potentially some room for improvement. Is there anything interesting or worth talking about that you've seen so far that you think like low-hanging fruit or?
So I would like to secure our vestibules a little better. We do have a secure vestibule.
Say
within-
vestibules?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
vestibules. Yep. So I'd like to keep everything outside. So when we have somebody that we don't know visit our school, we can vet that person outside the building. Once they get in, right now, the vestibule is open, but the lock is on the inside of the vestibule. So,
Already in the building.
what's that?
You're like already in the building.
Yeah, you're essentially behind one door, and I would like to build in multiple levels. And what it does is create time. If somebody were to try to get into a building, I don't want them to be one sheet of glass away from our staff inside or students inside. So being able to bring that system outside, and now they have to get through two, allows much more time for anybody, the time to react. Plus, we're relying on staff to activate that system so that the entire building is aware. This gives them more time to be able to do that. So that's one thing. Building our situation response teams a little bit more and giving them more reps and having them understand the incident command system, which I didn't even get into for time, but it's basically like a unified command that works with the emergency services system so that if we have an incident, we can all communicate the same way and have the same structures. So doing that and then reunification, I think, is the biggest thing that we need, is because it's far more likely that we'll need to reunify kids, and we want that to be an efficient and effective system, so we're able to get kids back as fast as possible to their kids or to their parents. Not only for them, but parents are also going to want their kids back as soon as possible. And that's what happens in any critical incident, like, give me my kid. And I get that, so we're trying to make that as effective as possible.
Janice?
Are there safety dots, like, I'm assuming in the elementary, but are they also in middle and high school?
Everywhere. Yep, every classroom. So unless we missed a few, but me and the SROs have been working on it for a while.
Susan?
Philip really asked my main question, so that's nice to have that answered about the things that you'd like to help us do better. When you said that in your initial assessment, you thought we had great systems, you mean in terms of process, protocol?
So the automated systems that are already in place are fantastic. A lot of districts don't have that, or they have different, like we have Visitor Aware here, which is a fantastic system that vets any visitors that are coming in, making sure they're run through certain registries, making sure they're not on the sex offender list or not on the child warrants and things like that. So that's a great system we have here. The clock system we have here is fantastic. I mean, if the system goes off, everybody in the building is going to know it very quickly, and we can react to that. The time from a critical situation happening until you get help is what matters. And having that system activate and alert our staff and students to be able to react to that and be safe as fast as possible is a very good thing that some districts don't have yet.
What about you talked about visibility in the buildings. Like, what do you try and do? I mean, I think
Visibility
it's
of me?
nice that the students would have an opportunity to see you and know you.
Sure, yeah. Haven't gotten to that point, but I would love to do that. So at the district that I was an SRO in, I did all the safety training for the students as well. I would say that with 2 school districts and 18 schools, that's a little bit hard to do right now. I mean, I'd love to do that, but it's enough trying to get the staff trained. But as far as visibility, just being in the buildings more and having the staff there know that they can contact me, and I'm here trying to make, my goal is to move the needle every single day, that we're making the schools safer in one way or another every single day. Some days are more than others, but
Again, we had a staff member from here in Mount Horeb, and you've just spoken to almost all the things that he said were so critically important. So it sounds, again, it's nice to have you still identifying improvements and being able to talk to us about that.
yeah, absolutely.
I just have one quick question, which is, do we get the data from Speak Up, Speak Out in terms of how many calls have gone in and what has happened with them?
Yeah, from an administrative standpoint, I can log in and see everything, and then how it was, what the buildings
Triaged.
did with it, triaged.
Yeah, so every single tip, there's certain people, there's buckets of people for each building. And then there's also district level leadership that get the same messages. So we can always go in there and see what that is. And then we can adjust how they're notified, if it's text message or email or phone call. And based on what is reported, it goes to a certain level. Like, is this a bullying situation that it hasn't been violent? Is the school able to handle this? Or is this somebody's suicidal in the middle of the night and they don't know anybody else to talk to, so they post a message on SUSO, and then it goes immediately to law enforcement so they can do a check welfare of that person. But we can access all of it.
I mean, it is sad that this is like such a critical and important topic, and I'm really glad that you're leading us here. I think the work has been fantastic. I was really excited when we moved to I Love You Guys protocol. I'm really glad to hear your thoughts around reunification. It made a lot of sense when you described like it should be built like building agnostic, right? Like it's just the process. I think that was really great. And so thanks for being here, and thanks for your work and keeping all of our kids safe and our staff safe. Appreciate you.
All right.
All right, going back to 3, which is policy updates, first reading. I don't know, Tanya or Susan, which one of you is kicking us off here?
Probably the right person to kind of review that is going to be Tanya, because she actually called us together. Basically, what you're going to see is we, as a board, brought you for first read a significantly rewritten, effectively new wellness policy. And we had a significant number of staffing input on that and superintendent revision. Basically, Tanya called the meeting and said, by the way, to do that and move it forward, we need to rescind the old policy. So that piece is just easy and it's very straightforward. And then in terms of the food services, again, I'll let Tanya speak to that. These are basically policies that she took and had worked with staff on. She also made some changes to the food service policy based on board input, interdistrict safe school transfer options. Again, a recommendation from the superintendent, and 7510, use of district facilities. Again, a recommendation from the superintendent, specifically, I would say, addressing liability. Again, these are policies that the superintendent had reviewed, which is very helpful to us, because often all of our work comes from Neola. And so to have a superintendent who has actually reading the policy and saying, oh, we need to probably work on this piece is incredibly helpful to us in the committee.
Susan. So we are audited on a regular basis for food service, and one of the things that came back on the audit was that our wellness policy that we have was wildly out of compliance. And so Maggie Sana, who was here earlier tonight, worked with us, and the recommendation from Neola and from her was to just scrap the old one and start over. So what you'll see there is a first attempt at a wellness policy. They can be incredibly robust. So you'll see there's many things that we didn't select as options because one of the things you have to do is you have to create a community committee. And so the idea was we'd get off the ground with some real basics, put us in compliance, but then build that committee that needs to meet 3 times a year, and then they can begin to flesh out deeper in that policy. So we'd be rescinding one and then adopting the new one.
Questions? I'm glad that we finally tackled the wellness policy. We've been out of compliance on it for many, many, many years, and I recognize that it's a beast, but for members that may not be familiar, it's a federal requirement. It's a USDA-based policy, and so it governs pretty much all things related to health and wellness. I have feedback on it, but I'll send it via email, Susan, to you and the committee on wellness. I have feedback on the wellness policy, but I'll email it to you. I will email it to you.
And isn't that up for second read tonight?
Wellness?
No, it's first
We're
read.
on first read. We're still in discussion.
Oh, first read,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, so I'll email you. Yes.
Like, again, just to remind newer board members, policy specifically outlines how to respond to wanting to make a change. And Elizabeth is doing exactly what we ask, and that is send us your language in, and Peter had done that previously, in writing, so that we can see how that fits. The superintendent can review it, take a step. If that needs to happen, and then it can come back to us to be reviewed as well.
Elizabeth, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Philip.
So with this one, were we out of compliance from a policy perspective only or in practice as well?
Both.
Or are there going to be fairly significant changes in practice following this? Or,
Yeah, I mean,
and I guess what will the impact be? And
I think it's a more well-rounded approach. I think Maggie has done a nice job since she's been here. Things that she's talked about, like when you think about what she just presented about, like a community dinner and the farm-to-school programs, just that basic understanding of where does food come from, how do you eat healthy food, general activity, just that overall, how those things fit together. She's done a lot of the stuff that we need to be doing. It just hasn't been captured in the policy. So some stuff will be a continuation, but probably the biggest opportunity is bringing together a group of people and really having conversation about not just what happens in our food service programming, but just wellness as a whole in the community. And so I think that will be the difference, is her guiding that group.
Any other questions? Okay.
Right, we're
So
back.
if you have specific feedback on any of these policies, please email them to Susan.
8500 is the food service policy. Again, work with Maggie and the policy committee. It was here last time for first read, and we had missed the fluid milk component, so that we added that back in. And then clarifying some language about what does substantial debt look like for a negative balance in the food service. So cleaning that up.
Thank you for incorporating my feedback.
The next policy, 511302, is a generic policy that I'm assuming got swept up in the Neola grab. If you are designated by DPI of being an unsafe school, there's certain transfer policies that allow. We've never been designated as that. If you were ever to be designated by that from DPI, they direct you to adapt this policy. So my recommendation would be to rescind it because I think it's confusing.
Questions on that one?
And I would just add, if, again, if the board feels strongly about keeping a policy that's basically not relevant to us at this time, let us know about that. But I think it's really helpful for the superintendent to look at that and say, you know, we don't need it and we've got enough policies and we should focus on the ones we have that affect us and change the work that we do.
And the last one is revisions to the use of district facilities. So upon, just reviewing all of our policies and thinking about how they set with best practices, one of the things that is in this policy is, as of right now, it does say that individuals can rent out our facilities, and there's not the qualifier of with sufficient insurance. So sometimes what you'll end up with is, an individual will want to rent out the Winnequa gym because they want to get some sixth grade people together to play basketball, and then we have to go through, well, you need insurance, and it's not your homeowner's insurance or a rider, there's specific insurance requirements. So just wanting to clear that up, that, we obviously, our facilities are for use for the public, but it really needs to be through some sort of an entity, whether it's a club or a group or Park and Rec, or even someone with an LLC, and that they have the sufficient liability insurance for that. The other two changes down there are just some grammar cleanup. And then weight room is another thing that you typically, we don't. It's not in the queue to be able to rent, but it was still in here, so this is a cleanup of practice. And mostly that's just about the injuries that can occur if people don't have a strong understanding of the equipment and how to use them safely, and just all the things. So those are the two recommendations.
Thank you. Questions? All right. Moving on to action items. The first is school safety drills.
Yeah. Asher bolted on me. Screwed him up when you messed the order. So we need to monthly bring safety drills in for the board to keep up with that we're in compliance. And so bringing these three together at once, and then going forward, it'll be on the consent agenda item going forward. So this is just to give you an idea about what he submits about the safety drills that we do to show that we're in compliance for DPI.
That requires board approval, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the board need to? I know you're going to put them in the consent agenda, but is there some language somewhere that specifically, I appreciate that we are approving each of them, but is there anything that gives us the guidance that we should be doing this, or?
Statute.
And that is, I can get later, that's fine.
I move approval of the 2024 safety drill for the months of September, October, and November as presented.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, Lena. I didn't know if you were raising your hand or just
Oh,
fixing your glass.
Fixing my glass.
Okay, never mind. We'll do a voice vote for this one. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up is the 2025-2026 Monona Grove High School course fees.
Yeah, so the CTE department put together, well, I guess bigger than that, some of the groups at the high school were asked to look at their course fees. And so you can see here proposals of in some cases, it's an increase in course fee. In some places, it's adding one. And the reasons why are all listed there. And Mitch is here with us too if there's specific questions that we'd want to ask.
Yeah, Philip.
I know this may vary across this list, but how often do we update these fees, or when was the last time that many of these fees would have been looked at?
I can only say that since my time, it's my fifth year.
Okay.
And so the coordinators would say it's been a decade plus.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's helpful.
Can I get a motion, please?
I move approval of the 2025-2026 Monona Grove High School course fees as presented.
I'll second that.
Mitch, I just have a quick question for you. For families that have a limited ability to pay, how do we manage that in course fees?
So they're administered through IC, and then as we go through
Got it.
And if the family fills out a, qualifies for free and reduced lunch, and then if they fill out the fee waiver, then those fees are removed.
Automatic. Great, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. Oh, yes, Janice.
I'd like to say this was really clear, so thank you.
I would like to say, however, that it, you know, it's really hard to see that we're assessing them for basically instruction. Understanding we need to do this, it's just a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, so we can't charge students for instructional, like an instructional fee. These really are around material fees. And so if you look at that far column about what the would be for, so for example, intro to manufacturing, they're paying for the materials for all those projects that they do and then take home. So then they have those projects. And so the majority of this is the fee for those activities that they engage in.
Yeah, I appreciate that piece. It's still part of their instruction pieces, equipment. Again, this goes back to those whole issues of the teachers buying the books for the kids to read in the classroom and those difficulties that we've always had. So it's kind of old time stuff. It's just tough to see that, but if that's what we need to do to make it available to the students, then you have to support it.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's do voice vote with this one. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Next up, policy update, second reading. Tanya, you want to?
Yeah, second
us off here?
reading. We went through these at the last board meeting. It's quite robust. I'm hoping that you got to spend some time with them, and I would open it up for any specific questions related to any policies.
Questions, can I get a motion?
I'd move approval of the proposed 2024-2020, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong, doesn't update.
I move approval of
Thank
the
you.
policy updated as presented.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Great. Any further discussion? Okay, all those, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Yes.
I'm
Susan.
sorry, Elizabeth. I
Yes.
just want to say very quickly that this policy work took hours, like 20 to 40
Yeah.
or more. And Tanya had gone through almost every line for us and then sat with us as we did this in our meetings. It took
Yeah,
us-
well, we really appreciate the work of the policy committee. It's a,
I can't thank the group enough for the work they did on this. It's impressive.
all right, next item, 2024-2025, support staff handbook revisions.
Personnel committee met on December 2nd, Monday, 1st, one of those days. And some of the things we discussed were some of the handbook language, and I'll just briefly go through those. These are all recommendations to be approved by the Personnel Committee. First one is personal business leave days provided so that they will be able to convert to an equal number of sick leave days. The second one is paid vacation, that employees will be able to roll over 5 days of vacation. Then for the number of years worked, we're recommending changing that from a 1 for 12-16 to 1 for 8 and 12 year. And then for section 19, hours of work and work schedules, you'll see that the pay rate for overtime, the holiday is going to be struck from there. And then for breaks, they shall not be scheduled at the beginning or end of any employee's shift without the employee's agreement. And then for school closures, we struck secretaries and all administrative assistants may work from home with their supervisor's approval. During inclement weather days, administrative assistants may elect not to work on inclement weather days and substitute accrued leave to remain in paid status. If there's any questions.
questions do you have for Eric or personnel? Philip?
Assume the answer to this, but these are not going to come as a surprise to MGA or staff. This has all been
No,
discussed.
this was after a lot of work on both ends to try to make some movement on some of the handbook things, so.
I would move approval of the proposed 24-25 support staff handbook revisions as presented.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? I just want to say thanks, Eric. I know you've been working really hard with Personnel Committee, so I appreciate the work that you've been doing.
And again, did the recommendations come from these staff individuals to the Personnel Committee? How did this?
Well, this has been ongoing. These have been ongoing since since Philip took over, and then I switched, and took over after Philip, of some of the handbook issues that have been discussed in the meet and confer meetings that we've been doing this year. So yes, they're ongoing things, and there's still other things we hope to get to as well. So these are the things that between MGEA and administration, we felt that we could act on without any financial. Yes.
Okay, just wanted to hear those words. I feel much better about that, just because we've had other processes, and I really appreciate that it went to personnel first, and they were able to put the package together.
I don't know, Tanya, if you have anything that you want to add to it, but just.
Well, I mean, I think, the proposals get exchanged and then we talked through. I mean, it's not this is what we want. Yep, you get it. It was, a robust process through meet and confer. And then this personnel committee said that they felt that those were things they could support and brought it here. So, I mean, I wouldn't say they were negotiated. I think the personnel committee did their work, but it was done with input and meet and confer.
Again, I was just confirming, particularly to the public, that the process, and I appreciate the committee following that process by doing it interactively, having it go to personnel rather than come directly to the board without being able to get all those pieces put together in the puzzle.
Any further discussion beyond what we did? Any objection to a voice vote for this one? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Next up, 2025, 2026, and 2026, 2027 school calendars.
Yeah, we're gonna knock two out in one fell swoop. Both calendar years have some challenges with the way holidays fall and things like that. We did do some survey data to find out some feedback from families as well as staff. So you can see the information that we gathered was there. That information was used then to form these two calendars. Pretty standard. Lisa and her team put the format together so it should look familiar to you from previous years. One of the reasons why we wanted to do 2 years in advance is, I think staff and family like to be able to pre-plan. And thinking into that next calendar year. And then in addition, earlier today, we talked about the SAIL work with continuous improvement, and we needed to lock those days in now for the next 2 years and be able to build it around our calendar because we feel it's important not to be, can't pull a large amount of staff out of the classroom for continuous improvement. So how can we get access to teachers and other staff so that they can co-create our continuous improvement plans?
There are no clarifying questions. Can I get a motion, please?
I move approval of the 2025, 2026, and the 2026, 2027 school calendars as presented.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I'll just say, you can never make everybody happy, but thank you for trying with taking input in and.
Yeah.
Well, it was funny because we assumed everyone would want 10 days off at Christmas break, and no, the majority of people wanted an 8-day break, not a 10.
Janice?
I will also just say that I really appreciate that there was a survey that was sent to both staff and families. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I want to echo that. That family engagement piece was huge. Thank you for that. Eric?
Just a question. I was going to say quick question, but a question. Have you thought about submitting a request to start earlier than September 1st to the state? Has that been in discussion at all? I'm just curious.
You have to have a pretty strong rationale, and outside of construction or, lots of different rationales have been used. What we've seen most successful is the need to be done earlier so that construction can start. So you've got the full June, July, and August. Could continue to give it a whirl, but
I was just curious because I don't know if districts are submitting stuff without construction to start earlier.
Trying,
Because you
yeah.
can do the written,
Yep.
it doesn't say it has to be construction.
correct. You just have to have a very compelling reason.
Right.
And if you look at most of the reasons that.
Got it.
That's been what it's.
The main one, okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Last item up for action is the 4K2 Cottage Grove Schools grade configuration.
And I believe Kristen is with us via Zoom.
Oh,
correct?
Maybe.
She said she was, so. Okay. Just to set the stage for some context. So as we have been working to
Oh, wow, she's in space.
wow.
So cool.
It's like the Muppets.
Oh my gosh, tell me it's you're 10
Oh my
o'clock at a
God.
board meeting without telling me you're 10 o'clock at a board meeting.
Exactly. Sorry.
Can someone screenshot that, please? That's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty great. So, just set some context. So, we've been spending a lot of time trying to get this current budget year in check and then building systems to think about long-range planning. So really thinking about that 5 to 10-year plan. And as part of that, one of the things, that you always look at is enrollment and enrollment projections. In addition to that, we've been looking at capital improvements and what needs to be done in the next 10 years. And also, the conversation of when you put those calculations together, usually as you're looking at enrollment projections for two reasons. One, you're looking at, do you have open enrollment seats you can open? Is that, that's a strategy. The other thing is also looking at building capacity to make sure that you're monitoring if a building might be getting too full. And this district has established building capacity numbers. So for each building, there's a number, and it's calculated based on square footage that the architects and people that design schools do. And it gives you that high-end number. And that high-end number is generally 90% of your actual capacity. So we call it 100, but it's really 90 because you want to give yourself that buffer, right? And so as we were looking at that, what I didn't see was a low end. Like, when does enrollment in a building get to a point where it should trigger a conversation of, does this make sense to keep doing it this way, or should we be starting to have a different conversation? And that number is usually, you want a building to be 100% full, 90 is kind of like where you want to be. And so as we were gathering those numbers and working through the 4K2 reconfiguration and looking at building capacity, it did appear that there was a conversation about, do we need to think about that? So, our buildings here in Monona are running 95 to 98% capacity. And then when you look at our Cottage Grove schools, we're sitting more into an 80 to 53% capacity. And so, when you look at the total numbers of seats that are available for 4K5 students in Cottage Grove, it's 1,596 or something like that. And when you look at our enrollment projections, we're sitting at around 1,000 students and not really projected to have major growth in the next 5 years. We've talked about this. I know that feels really strange because when you drive that way, you just see lots of holes in the ground and lots of things. Right now there's a debate at the village board about a housing development that they're talking about bringing in one of the cities, like our some community members' argument is you can't approve that because it would overburden our schools. Well, we could actually use the kids. It's 55 and older in some things, so I'm not really sure it's going to be a partner to anybody. But I think that, re-looking at this and having a conversation about it as a board for you to decide where that lives, I think is smart. And just don't want people to move and we rearrange. And then in 2 years, everyone's like, oh, we should probably talk about capacity. Like, whoa, we're not getting the kids we thought. Like, what should we do now? And think of more of a long game. So Kristen's on the call to talk about any of the data that we have with those updated numbers and things like that. But just wanted to.
And I was going to say, can we put up this, you made it very nice, the projections from the prior and the current projection.
Are you in the bottom one?
Yeah, yes.
So, moving forward, really, we're working on a 5-year projection right now. And every year you should update that so you get to the next 5 years. So you're always 1 year's rolling off into actuals and you're adding that next 5-year projection. 10-year projections are great, but they do also, after 5 years, how accurate you are becomes a little wonky, which is why you're always constantly revisiting it.
Right. I mean, the reason we're here, I think we need to have a discussion about why we're here. The bottom on this chart here is our 2017 projections, the Van der Waal projections, which historically we'd had good track record with. And in fact, this you'll see that it shows projected growth going forward. And it was actually basis on these numbers. We're going to run out of space in Cottage Grove, and this is on the basis of these numbers we built Granite Ridge School because we needed to. And well, around 2020, something to do with the pandemic, those numbers changed dramatically. And if you cast forward, you see we're going to be missing 300, 400, 500 kids a year. And we actually couldn't accommodate the students we are going to have in Taylor Prairie and Cottage Grove, but Granite Ridge is larger than both of those, is larger than those schools. And given the numbers that we will have, if you take that 400 away, we can't accommodate enough students in Granite Ridge, in Taylor Prairie, or Granite Ridge and Cottage Grove. And this is, it's always been hard to have really super accurate population projections in Monona. We've seen difference. During the pandemic, we saw the Monona population increase quite unexpectedly. And so this kind of disrupted everything. And unfortunately, we're in a place we didn't anticipate being. But I don't think there's any way to see this kind of pandemic coming, and I think which is largely responsible for the dislocation, the difference between these two numbers.
Met with the village and their projections. It's not different.
It's the same.
Because they were part of this, like your building planning and your subdivisions and all that all fed into this study. So I don't see any flaw with the original study. I mean, it was what it was. I think there's rounding up anytime you're looking at doing something like that, but nothing grossly out of whack, but it didn't pan out.
There has always been this perception, there's been this concern, they're building all these houses in Cottage Grove, what are we going to do about the kids? And to be honest, for more than 20 years, the village and the town of Cottage Grove have been very good about managing growth in a responsible way, in a steady way. It hasn't been a problem for a long time. In the 90s, there was a lot of growth which created, which made for problems, but they got that in control and they've been managing it quite well, really, quite consistently. And whatever's happened in the last several years, it's not the same as it was.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to say, I appreciate all the work that the Cottage Grove families did in researching kind of how we move forward for best practices. But I also appreciate this kind of creative solution because we don't want to disrupt anything more than necessary. And so I kind of appreciate the fact that you guys are being creative and thinking about how we can best use our facilities, and also kind of do that best practices where we have neighborhood schools. So yeah, I guess I also, like, my kids went to Winnequa, and that school felt full, but good full. Like, we didn't have empty rooms. We didn't have, the spaces that were there were utilized. So I felt like we were doing the best with the funds that we were allotted. And my kids left that building, prepared for the next step. So a pause doesn't sound like a bad idea to me, to take more time to research and think of how to best move forward.
I did want to.
Let me just make sure, because any other thoughts before, right now? Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
I had done a tour of the schools with Tanya, and it was surprising to me going through the elementary schools in Cottage Grove, how many empty rooms there were. Like, I didn't expect that, and yet there were. So it was kind of eye-opening.
Go ahead, Pete.
When you build a school, you make sure you have capacity for a while, and we're anticipating growth, and so we should be underfilled, and now we're more underfilled than we expected. I did want to. Seemed to be some confusion that we were going to be talking about class sizes, that this is related to class sizes, and it is not. I just wanted to make that clear, that it's not related to class sizes. This is the question of total building capacity. We would still be maintaining our class sizes, or this discussion has nothing to do with class sizes.
Yeah,
and I think one of the things we looked at was this current board policy on class size was the class size ranges that were used to figure out space.
Right.
So there's not a discrepancy with that.
Yeah, Susan.
I felt this agenda item is kind of difficult. So first of all, it's placed in the action rather than for discussion, which I think is.
We discussed it last week, Susan, at the December 2nd meeting. It was a discussion.
Right. And we also don't have an administrative recommendation on, on board docs.
We do. There's a recommended motion in board docs.
So I'm looking
The
at.
recommended action.
Maybe I'm just missing.
Yeah, so we had the initial part of this conversation at the November 13th meeting when we started talking about enrollment and capacity. We had it on our agenda on December 2nd, where we had it for discussion in anticipation of action today.
And for some reason, you guys are seeing an administrative recommendation?
Yeah, it's there.
Because I have the documents. Okay, so the administrative.
Right there. Sorry.
Okay.
Recommended action.
Okay, so the recommendation, I just want to clarify for us and for the community, it's a motion to pause the 4K reconfiguration for the 25-26 school year so we can further study the numbers, the projections, and the capacity. Do I understand that correctly? Because we've gotten so many calls from so many people that what I want to do is make sure that the community understands what our thoughts are and what the going forward is. And they have access to these documents, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes these aren't posted in public, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your help and the clarity.
Yes.
Yeah, and probably we should clarify what we're talking about here, because we haven't done it, which is that next year we were planning moving to neighborhood configuration for 4K2 in 2 schools. And what we're discussing about tonight is just putting that on hold so that we don't end up making one change and then another change the year after. because that's disruptive. We don't know where we're going to be. Hopefully, they're going to approve 1,000 units, and we're going to get another. We're ready for 500 kids. At this point, I've never said that before, but boy, I'd like to see 500 kids.
Yeah, Tanya.
But
So I think 2 points. One, the reason that it's, we want to act on this now is if we don't, then, and it moves forward as is, families start registering in January. And we've got families with littles that, like, where am I going to school, right? And so, like, we need to be clear about that. I think the other conversation that has to happen for January is open enrollment seats. And the numbers that, can you reopen that bottom one? The numbers that you're looking at there, that includes the 500 open enrollment students district-wide. And we have very few open enrollment students at Winnequa. I think there's like 3. And so the majority of our students that are OE in are out in Cottage Grove. And I can pull the high school numbers out of there also. So this isn't just resident students even. And we need to figure out what kind of seats we are going to approve to open up for next year. So 2 very timely things that are coming up.
one of those things that makes me very unhappy, but I move to pause the 4K2 reconfiguration for the 25-26 school year.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that. I do want to say, by pausing this means we go back to the community and we take plenty of time to make the best decision.
I think that when it was a good decision, I'm not saying anything. It's the right one, right? To go to neighborhood schools. I think that the district, as board members, you set lots of operating parameters in which we do business in. And there's no operating parameters here. And so setting those operating parameters of kind of like, what is your target building capacity that you want to try to be at? And if it's not, too much, too little, what is that next step conversation? So I think the teaching and learning and like what's best for kids conversation doesn't change. But the fiscal and the operational side of it is what feels like needs to be worked through. And however the board wants to move forward with doing that and getting that feedback, that's for you to decide, but.
Yeah, it's late, so I won't take up too much time, but this is it's so hard. And you all know, kind of for me personally, the TLE committee worked really hard studying this to what I think remedy the incorrect decision previously about not doing community schools at the time that was originally presented. We worked really hard on it. We had a really fantastic boundaries committee that did really great work. The schools are there, great. My kids have now attended all the elementary schools in the Monona Grove School District. And so it's hard. And just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. And so this is a really difficult one for me. But what I would like to see, Tanya, sort of moving forward is obviously we have to get through enrollment and open enrollment, kind of as we're rounding out the end of the school year, what the community engagement plan will look like on it. Like I said, the boundaries committee was really good. It was a really, I think, effective use of a committee. And I think the point that was made earlier around, because of the nature of how Monona is set up versus the way Cottage Grove is set up, the switching and changing and moving around tends to happen more often there than it does in Monona. And so I think it's critical that we're really transparent about what does that community piece look like, to make sure that folks out there know, understand, are comfortable, are able to provide input and feedback. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to make for stronger school community, which was the whole point of the 4K2 transition in the first place.
I have to disagree with that assessment because we went through a period here where there was a lot of changes. My kids attended 3 elementary schools too, and it was changed and a lot of controversial changes. But ultimately, in the end, and someone who was an older retired resident of the district at the time said to me, well, the facilities follow the kids. You take the kids and you serve the kids with as best you can with the facilities you have, and do that. But that follows the kids, and we're seeing another instance of that where we have fewer kids than we thought we would, and we have to follow that demographic.
Yeah, Susan.
So Elizabeth, do you have a thought that you'll reconvene the committee and be able to?
Not the boundaries committee. It had a really specific purpose. I think a administrative advisory committee, not a board committee, around that information would be really helpful, because a lot of that's going to go through F&O and TLE. Because when we're talking about kind of the operations aspect of it, the information that comes from the study should go through F&O. The things around curriculum and instruction should go through TLE, and then those recommendations should merge and come to the board is how I'm anticipating it.
I think the reason I was asking was that was a really good committee.
Yeah, they were
very
awesome.
Impressive, and I thought you guys did just a great job of looking at everything. And I just thought with this kind of information, to hear the questions that they have about this and be able to answer those would make us more informed board members.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think the difference between this and the boundaries committee is that, we had a lot of really great discussion, but at the end of the day, you're looking at data and you're looking at maps, right? Which are very kind of like, they're condensed, they're discrete, and you're like, okay, if we literally move this line over here and move this line over here, what happens? And so I think the community feedback piece was incredibly important, and whatever happens here, is far-ranging in a way that I would want deeper community engagement outside of what had happened kind of during that committee, which was great, and we had great community engagement, but it's not the scope or depth or breadth that I think this conversation warrants. And so I think we can have community members on a committee, an advisory committee for you, Tanya, but we also just need a broader engagement strategy in the community as a whole.
So you just said the perfect words, but your thought is that you're still going to get a community engagement group together for discussion of this information, explaining this information, and
yeah, I'd like to direct administration to manage that aspect as opposed to making another board committee.
Again, I think I just thought, because you already had that committee put together, one of the things that I watched happen in that committee, which was really great, was the ability to explain the reason and the rationale for the 4K2. And again, just being able to explain this information and explain, have somebody from the village talking about the growth plans as well. I mean, that's a helpful piece. So your thought is you're still going to bring people together from the community in some way, shape, or form.
I mean, yeah, we'd
have discussion.
Yeah, and we can talk as we go further. And I want to make sure that Tanya and Kristen in particular get through open enrollment and staffing for next year, and then
updated,
and then administration along with Katie likely will work on what does a robust community engagement plan look like, so that as we're moving forward and as things come through board committee, we're able to be sure that we've saturated the community.
That's great. Thank you very, very much for that information.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Any other discussion? Okay. Are we comfortable with voice vote, or do you want to do a roll call vote? Any objections to voice vote? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. All right. Second to last, Tanya. You always put yourself at the bottom here. We had personnel, TLE, policy, and MGEF committees this year. Eric, I know that we just did some handbook items. Did you have anything else you wanted to update in terms of personnel?
Just have no meeting in January, meeting on February 5th and March 12th.
Thank you very much. Rochelle, recognizing.
Oh, I got one more thing.
Oh,
The building services ratified the.
Oh, that's great.
Very voted on.
Congratulations, everybody. That's awesome. Rochelle, I know that we just did your TLE.
Yeah, you guys
repriced.
covered it. So our next meeting is Tuesday, the 17th, and we'll be meeting online at 4 o'clock to 5:30.
Great. Susan, anything additional with policy other than what we covered today in first read?
We
and
covered
second read?
everything that we've done, right up to the last meeting.
Well, then this leaves the Monona Grove Education Foundation, which
Right
I'm
here.
sure you have an update for, so.
I wrote a little report, like 2
I know.
minutes here. Okay,
my
we
first
had
review.
so the Monona Grove Education Foundation met on December 10th, 2024 at 4 p.m. There was a report from the superintendent. She reported out the formation of the Operations and Finance Committee. New committee has 2 community and 1 staff member, and will be providing additional information soon. Teaching, Learning, and Equity has added their 2 community members, 1 staff member, and they joined the November meeting. There will be a report to the board about the district report card. So she reported that out. So if people wanted to be able to watch that, that would be available. And she also reported out that the board plans to continue discussion on the 4K configuration. So announcements, Wendy Perkins, who is currently on the Monona Grove Education Foundation board, will be leaving the board as her term is expiring, and she's very busy. Board terms for Abby Eddington and Kathy Bernards were renewed for 3 years. Election of officers, there's been no change. President Jason McCutcheon, Vice President Jane Beebe, Treasurer Mary Salve, and Secretary Mary O'Connor. The CARES update on their CARES program is they're still working to meet their $50,000 goal. So again, if people want to be supportive of that and make their before the year end charitable contribution, this is a great way to do that. Jane Beebe said the innovation grants are due at the end of January. They also mentioned that a donation had been made to MG21, and they funnel that through the foundation right now. In terms of the snack pack program, there's going to be a fundraising event at Culver's Cottage Grove, December 17th from 5 to 8 p.m., so please go. The Cottage Grove Playground Fundraising Committee will be joining the foundation board at their January meeting for further discussion. And then they're talking about, which I don't have any experience with, so it'll be interesting to see that come forward. There's been a request from Cottage Grove School for a book vending machine, and that's planned for the January meeting discussion.
That's fun. Those are really cool. Great, thank you. All right, last up, superintendent's report.
Right. Just working, as I said, we're all into planning for next year. So working with Nelson's bus company on routes for next year and having conversations about how do we continue to provide high quality service and partnership with them. Just want to acknowledge the bargaining and meet and confer groups and the personnel committee. Appreciate, it was the first time through that for me. So appreciate the collaboration that was there, and happy to say that we got through that for the bargaining part, and everyone will get their back pay December 27th. And so that was a great thing to get done and be able to staff to know that part.
Congrats to everybody.
The Cottage Grove School and Family Organization has taken on the playground at Cottage Grove School. We had originally had conversations about adding some more equipment there that would be for littles, and then also some accessibility issues that playground has. So really grateful to them. They will regroup in preparation for us pausing and see what that might look like different. There's still needs that have to happen there, and happy to work with them on whatever they want to see going forward from a rate and pace perspective. We have had some contacts at the district level and I think to the board around human growth and development. Just put the policy on there, just reminding everybody that work has to go through an advisory committee. That would be something that we'd be looking at for 25-26 school year. It's 2014-ish is about the last time it was convened. So it's probably time. But that would be a next year project. And then we were notified of students that received the Outstanding Young Persons Award. And these are for students who are from historically marginalized groups, really around leadership, work ethic. And so we're super excited. You can see the names of the students there. So we just got that information. There'll be a ceremony for them at Edgewood High School in January. So,
any questions? Yes, Susan.
So Tanya, sometimes they bring forward not necessarily major changes in busing routes and that kind of thing to the board. I don't know that, I mean, administration usually handles that pretty well. But did you get any feeling from Nelson that we were going to have to make any major changes in routes? Well, sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's just to routes and things.
Yeah, they handle all the routing. That's part of their contract. We don't get involved in any of that. If they ever were looking at having to add more routes and it would change our fiscal responsibility to them, then that would be something that would come forward. But
As far as we know, there aren't any changes.
we haven't gotten that far.
Okay, oh, you haven't gotten that far. Okay, that's. I
Started
just-
the conversation.
Yeah, and that's operational, Susan. We usually don't see bus routes. What we'll see is the contract with
Right,
Nelson's.
but usually we get a report out if there are going to be changes. So I was just asking, but we're not there yet. So that's absolutely fine. So if somebody asks, then we can answer that too. The other question that would be helpful, and it's a question I'm pretty sure we can't answer it tonight, and that is, again, if the Cottage Grove School Family Organization, one of the things they were bringing forward on their playground work, which was really impressive, was accessibility improvements. So no matter what we're going to do in the future, if you could bring us information about whether they're still thinking about doing that, the accessibility, particular accessibility improvements, that would be helpful. Because again, then you can support that piece and support that fundraising piece well. So I don't know what your process is for all that. And then Human Growth and Development Committee is, so you're having a plan to,
It's been asked if we would reconvene that committee this year to look at curriculum, and there's just not any capacity this year to do that. So that would come in the curriculum renewal cycle for next year.
Tanya and I are meeting though with
some families that have
some of the
questions.
families that have questions. We'll be meeting with them next week.
oh, okay, and you'll just report back, because I guess I don't have enough information on that. Again, I've researched it, I've pulled all the statutes. I guess one of the questions that would be helpful to know the answer to is, it's kind of my impression. So is there a statutory requirement for this committee? Okay.
And the makeup of the committee is also statutorily dictated.
So I linked the policy there, and it's all outlined in the board policy.
So the proportion of committee members is also dictated by statute.
So is it statutorily required?
It's not statutorily required to teach human growth and development, but if you're a district that opts into teaching it, then there's a whole host of requirements in terms of what the curriculum has to cover, how the curriculum has to be presented, and then the creation of an advisory committee with the proportions dictated out per statute. So you can only have so many staff versus so many community members versus so many administrators. It's all laid out in the statute.
So we're not looking at further progress on that?
Not for
in
this
the
year.
25-26 school year, or?
So Tanya and I will be in some discussion before the end of this school year to talk about what it looks like to convene that committee in advisory starting in the 25-26 school year, which then would look at curriculum implementation likely the following year.
Again, I was
But not for this year. The priority this year is budget management, right? And making sure that piece is there, and then looking at enrollment as well. So, but it'll be on the docket for the fall.
Because again, when I was looking at the DPI and the statutory language on there, it looked like we needed to move on that. But you've researched it and you're coming back with.
We're not out of compliance on the statute, Susan, but if you are going to make curriculum adjustments, you have to have a committee, and the committee has to follow the parameters that are laid out in the statute. But we're in compliance with human growth and development statute.
I thought we had gotten feedback that there had been a change.
No.
Okay, so I'm just asking for clarity here because I know,
There are concerns that our current way of doing human growth and development has opportunities for increased inclusivity. And so that's the discussion that we're having. And then as the committee convenes itself, then they'll have a discussion around, okay, what materials are available. Hasn't been looked at in a decade. A lot has changed in a decade in terms of not, how people think and orient to human growth and development. And so that'll be the work of that group, which is advisory to the superintendent.
I just noticed that McFarland does have one.
They had a committee last year. They just adopted new curriculum this year, but their committee ran last year, but it's not a standing committee. It was an ad hoc.
Ad hoc.
Yep, it was an ad hoc committee. Yep. But they had a great process, and so they'll be a nice neighboring school for us to look at.
And one of our previous staff members is on that committee.
Great.
Hey, thanks. There wasn't a lot of clarity on all that, so I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
All right, future meeting dates are there. Anything else for the good of the group? Otherwise, I would entertain a
I
motion to
make a
adjourn.
motion to
You finish
adjourn the meeting.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned at 10:25. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.